Oh, here we go.
So it has a smell.
That's
it's very pungent.
I don't know about
got
this.
quite a bouquet.
Odorous.
Okay. So listeners, Brian has purchased for us something that is called Haunted Apple Fanta. It is in collaboration with the new Beetlejuice movie.
Yeah, it's just...
Sorry.
You're making it sound like an ad. It's just... I got this at the grocery store.
This episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds is brought to you by Beetlejuice.
First an actual ad. Because, Jones does like a green apple soda.
So this
that is
is
wonderful.
This is crucially haunted apple.
Yes, I think
Which
it's
it says
very spoopy.
spiced apple soda.
Yeah.
Now, there's no caffeine in this. I should note that.
Yeah. Contains no juice. It says in very big letters.
It has Michael Keaton making his O face right there on the can.
As Beetlejuice,
As
yes.
Beetlejuice.
It's striped.
It is horrible to look at, as Maddie was saying earlier.
It is awful to behold.
So why don't we all just kind of take a sip?
It is neon green.
Here we go.
Oh no, here we go.
Oh
no.
Hey, fellas,
Yeah?
I don't hate this.
this is pretty.
No!
Really? This is it's like an apple cider, but it's a soda pop for
I
some
don't
reason.
know.
Oh, the
No, this
cinnamon really lingers.
Yeah, I was about to say the cinnamon really lingers.
I don't know. That was
on the same page.
That was fine. The cinnamon really lingers. Derogatory. Maddie, the cinnamon really lingers. It's positive.
This is great.
That was not what I was expecting.
I'm about to go scan for more info.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast that you should scan for more info. I'm the Worst of All Possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Brian's.
And I'm the worst of all possible Josh's. And you've already heard, but AJ, why are you laughing?
No, I'm sorry. It is really green. It is like phosphorescent
seen it
green.
yet.
Green like Beetlejuice.
I feel like it
Beetlejuice.
should be like cider colored, but I guess I understand why it's green. I suppose it should be black and white
What's
striped.
important to know is that every time a soda is a color, they turned it that color.
Yeah.
You make soda.
This was not God's doing.
We should introduce our guest today because you are, of course, hearing we have a fourth voice on the mic today. They are a cartoonist who writes a weekly webcomic and in 2023 published their first graphic novel called Boys Weekend. They also co-host the Temporal Culture War podcast with Clayton Ashley, and that recaps episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, as well as the forthcoming, very, very soon, and maybe will even be out by the time this episode is released, who can say?
Who knows?
No Gods, No Mayors podcast with friends of our show, November Kelly and Riley Quinn. Please welcome to the show, Mattie Lubchansky.
Hi, thank you for having me on. Just crucially also, Temporal Culture War, not a recap podcast where we do recap the episodes, but it's mostly about what was going on in 2001 in America the week of the airing of Star Trek Enterprise episodes.
Right.
Okay.
So
as we try to get to the heart of them trying to capture John Q. Truck of Centralia,
Right.
Kansas as he listens, as he watches Enterprise every week.
kind of placing it in the cultural context of the moment.
Yes.
That is also our goal with every episode of this podcast.
Yeah,
How can we reach?
That's why we replaced our theme song with the Enterprise theme song.
Brendan Dalton is going to be so pissed. Oh, but we are here today to talk about a film I had not seen until 2 days ago.
Yes.
Which, that's astonishing to me,
Yeah.
AJ,
Oh,
that
I
you had
know.
not seen this movie.
That's crazy.
For the record, I didn't see it until like last year myself.
Yeah,
Were you,
it is
were you guys raised like under a rock or a carpet?
No,
Yeah, I was.
I was
Okay.
not. I was just did not watch a lot of movies. I think is sort of the big thing.
AJ has never seen a movie.
I notoriously have never seen
Neither
a movie.
has
and
Josh,
neither has
but he saw
Josh.
Roger Rabbit somehow.
When I was a kid,
Everybody
yeah.
saw Roger Rabbit.
I think because it was just it's such a horny film.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
maybe that's why because I hung out with
My
a lot
mother certainly had an issue with Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah,
she
I-
made that known.
I think it's just a thing. I was hanging out around with a lot of like evangelical Christians at the time when I was growing up, and so it wasn't like I would go to this is like such a sleepover movie. I feel it's something you'd go and like to a friend's house and watch with your friends, but this just wasn't the kind of movie we were watching.
Sure.
Mostly because when I would go over sleepovers, I'd go to a guy guy's house who had a box under his TV that would bleep out any curse words underneath
That was
and
called
replace
the
them.
TVG, short for TV Guardian. There's a Technology Connections episode on YouTube about it. It's also something I know about because I had that.
Oh yeah!
Oh my God!
Yeah,
really?
no, Brian, I remember you telling the story about Woody in Toy Story.
Yes,
That's
so whenever
right.
you got to a swear word in the dialogue, it read the closed captioning and it would mute the volume for that full line of closed captioning, and then display the captions, but censored in some ways.
I can only play Toy Story with TV Genie.
Yeah, TV Guardian.
Sorry.
If it wouldn't be a
because we were
genie, that's religiously confusing
true.
for the
That's true.
evangelicals who
Yeah.
buy it.
That's corrupt.
Yeah. So
That's of the occult.
But everyone
didn't-
comes with three witches.
Yeah.
Witches.
It's true. No, not that either.
No, definitely
So
not
it would
that.
censor,
Never
of course,
that.
like damn and hell would just sort of go blank. But then
Sure.
it had like funnier, spicier words. Of course, it always censored God and Jesus. So if you watched a Christian movie, like that would go away. It would
so
censor
funny.
wuss in addition to pussy.
Okay.
And change it to wimp. So then you
Okay.
could see someone talking about her wimp. And it would also censor balls.
Right.
Okay.
Ass, sometimes ass in the middle of a word. Butt was also censored. Gay would be
Would
censored.
butt be censored if someone was saying like "I love you," but I
No,
am
they
leaving?
didn't get the conjunction in
Okay.
there. They censored gay, and then the weirdest one was they censored the word woody. A
Yeah.
word I have never heard in its sexual connotation, even right now on this very ribald podcast.
And remind me again, Brian, what they called Woody?
Notion. Which that doesn't even make sense. Hey, that broad up there has given me a notion.
To be fair, watching this movie, I got several notions. Because this movie is shockingly horny
Yeah, it is.
for a kids movie. But like
because we
Zemeckis,
used to be a real country.
we
right.
did, we did.
Proper country.
But like Zemeckis himself is also like a pretty horny
He
filmmaker.
wrote a whole trilogy of movies about wanting to fuck his own mom. Like,
Right,
Yeah.
and that was also a
Crucially.
family film.
Well, before we get into talking about, how this movie came to be and so forth, I wanted Maddie to just sort of ask you a little bit about your experience with this, because as we've said, you are a cartoonist. You have an enjoyment of things like that. I don't know why I said that
yeah,
way.
I
That
do.
was
I
weird.
do. I do be having an enjoyment of things like this. No, that's exactly correct, Josh.
Things like cartoons.
It's funny because I didn't watch it for a really long time. I definitely saw it either in theaters or at a sleepover or something. I saw it a lot when I was a little kid. Maybe I think I might have had it taped off of television. There's I don't know if you recall a very short-lived technology called VCR Plus. Where it was basically there was every show in the TV guide had a code next to it.
Yeah.
And if you punch that code into the VCR, it would like automatically tape that show for
Okay.
you. It was like
Oh, wow.
rudimentary
So fancy.
TiVo from First Principles.
Sure.
And all it did was
Right.
it was just like an algorithm like for a time code in a channel.
Yeah.
So I figured out how to do this myself.
Okay.
And I would just
Cool.
tape whatever I wanted to watch. So and just no one was paying enough attention to me, I think.
Yeah. The late
So-
night broadcast of Real Sex on HBO. Yeah.
Like, yes. Or I'd go back downstairs at night and watch that. I don't know. Like I was
Like, oh,
I was a little
vacuum
cra-
suits. Okay.
I have a really vivid memory of the vacuum suit.
That's the one everyone has seen
No, I
for
remember
some
the vacuum
reason.
suits. I remember the one where they show a very big lady stomping on men.
Okay.
Okay.
Formative experiences.
It's
Yeah.
just all activation moments.
I mean,
for young Maddie.
there was a legitimate activation moment seeing a trans woman on that one of those shows.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Thank you,
wow.
HBO, for all you've done for me.
So with Roger Rabbit, then, like,
Yeah.
how old? Like you said, you were a kid. Like, roughly, how old would you say you were when you saw this movie for the first time?
That's a really great question. What year did this come out? This came out in the 80s, right?
It was 88.
88. Yeah, I think I probably didn't see this movie until I was like 10 or 11.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, it might have been because I listened to Blank Check and they were doing Zemeckis.
Yeah.
I was like, I haven't seen Roger Rabbit in forever. I'm going to rewatch Roger Rabbit. And I was like, this is maybe 2 years ago. And I was like, this is a fucking miracle. Like, I don't understand how this works.
Yeah.
It should be on so many levels. Like, technically, it's so impressive.
Yeah.
There's that one very famous letter that goes around sometimes where they're like, you make eye contact with you have to be making eye contact at all times. Like, it
Yeah.
works so much better than most blue screen things of even the time or even later. It's like some of the best tennis ball acting ever committed to film.
Right. And certain actors are much better at tennis ball acting than other actors. And I don't think anyone's done it better than Bob Hoskins in this movie.
No, I remember like loving it because I was also a really obsessed with the Super Mario Brothers movie as a child.
Hell yeah.
So I was like, that's my guy. That is my man. From the
That is my Mario.
Yeah, that's my Mario.
That's the thing. We've had comic artists on to talk about Bob Hoskins movies before.
We have.
Because we had Michael Kupperman on to talk about Heart Condition, one of the worst things he ever made.
Yeah.
So join us next month when Jim Davis joins us to talk about Pennies from Heaven.
That's wrong.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit comes out in 1988 and is a huge like box office success.
Yeah, it was a gigantic risk and it paid off.
They put so much money into this film, but they had like reason to do so because Robert Zemeckis was having the best 80s anyone probably had. While Zemeckis had a really great 80s, it didn't start out great. In 1980, he comes out swinging with this huge flop, Used Cars, and I am also still drinking this Fanta throughout the course of this.
And making eye contact with everyone, with all the hosts saying, this is really good.
Yeah, no, I'm still drinking it, so I don't know what that says about me.
It's kind of
garbage.
It's kind of making me a little phlegmy. I don't know what they have in here, but sorry, folks. There's extra mouth sounds.
Am I detecting a note of clove in here too?
Yeah, a little bit. It's got that cider thing.
A haunting of clove.
A haunting of clove.
You know, it's less sugar than I thought. It's only 42 grams. I feel like compared to a regular Fanta drink, that's a little low.
Yeah. So Used Cars is Zemeckis' second film.
Yeah. Generally well received. But not a great
commercial hit, right? It is for all intents and purposes a flop, and he spends a couple of years in studio jail. No one is willing to give him a project, because of the bomb of Used Cars. Until he made two of the most seminal films of the '80s back to back. He made *Romancing the Stone* and, of course, *Back to the Future*. *Romancing the Stone*, something that hasn't really carried through to the modern day and like pop culture.
Yeah, it's not super well remembered, but it. I think it holds up for the most part. It's another, after Indiana Jones, people are like, how do we do another Indiana Jones?
Yeah,
and this is the only one that ever really stuck.
I watched the very bad movie they were attempting to it was not a remake, but the Sandra Bullock Lost City movie from a couple years ago. They're clearly they're trying for the juice really hard. It's called The Lost City, I think. I feel like I absorbed *Romancing the Stone* by osmosis, which is to say, in like 15-minute snippets on Comedy Central in the afternoon when I was in high school.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But I've never sat down and watched the film.
Yeah, it's not something I would seek out. Whereas *Back to the Future* it became like a cornerstone of American pop culture.
Yeah,
so much so that there's currently a musical of it playing on Broadway.
Yeah,
that seems like it will live there forever.
The car is so fucking cool.
Is it?
It's unbelievable.
How do they do it?
I don't know, but at the end of the show, they make the car go upside down.
Yeah, they do little flippy flips, right?
Oh, wow. So wait, then where's it going? Because it's going to need roads when it gets there, right?
It lifts up in the air.
Oh, Brian, where they're going? They don't need
That's
roads.
The thing.
They're actually on a stage. Yeah.
They're going 9 years into the past.
And 88 miles per hour.
Yeah. Robert Zemeckis, to quote a podcast that was brought up a couple of minutes ago, has a blank check at this point in Hollywood. He has the ability to get into any room he wants. And in addition, he has Steven Spielberg there to back him up.
Yeah.
And so they decide to do this project that has been kind of in development since 1981 when Disney bought the rights to a book by Gary K. Wolfe, who is not, as his name implies, a cartoon wolf.
He is a cartoon Gary.
That's true. He is a cartoon Gary.
He's a cartoon Gary and a live action wolf.
But just his eyes and his teeth. It's very disconcerting to look at. And this book is called Who Censored Roger Rabbit?
Yeah.
And has anyone read the book?
No, but I know he's like a newspaper character in it.
Yeah, he's a comic strip character.
Yeah, very different.
And he talks in speech bubbles. His speech bubbles get taken away. Yes. There's a lot of stuff. There's like a genie. It's a little much. And we don't really know how it got to Disney, but like while it was still at the publisher, before it got published, somebody sent a manuscript over to Disney.
Bunny.
Somebody once.
So is this a novel or a graphic novel?
It's a novel.
It's a novel.
A real novel.
I just remember the cover of it
Great
is like
American
the
novel.
Great American novel who censored Roger Rabbit. I remember the cover of it is like there's like a gumshoe facing a silhouette of basically one of the rabbits from David Lynch's Rabbits. It's like the mascot sort of
like
head.
he's Harvey sized.
Zemeckis and Spielberg had been working together for a long time because Zemeckis basically, the way Spielberg tells it, just like stormed into his office and was like, I have a student film, you're going to watch it. And Spielberg was like, yeah, okay, I'm not doing anything.
They're stylistically very similar people. They're both really into special effects. They both know how to get the job done.
And Spielberg produces the first two directorial ventures of young Zemeckis, I Want to Hold Your Hand and the aforementioned Used
Did you guys
Cars.
watch the young Zemeckis adventures? I thought they were pretty good.
It was interesting when he
lot
met
of money,
Lennon.
lot higher budget than you'd
Really
expect
high
for a
budget.
TV thing.
You find out why he wants to have sex with his mom so badly.
So Disney, as we said, acquires the rights in 1981, and they bring on Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman to do the script for it. That's how hard it is.
Cartoon Seaman.
Yeah. So I want to shout out Price and Seaman here for a minute because them as a writing duo, what a weird and wild career these two have had writing things. They wrote the Jim Carrey How the Grinch Stole Christmas screenplay.
Oh.
They wrote Shrek the Third.
Okay.
The third.
And of course, they wrote the screenplay for Wild Wild West. And were forced to include the giant mechanical spider.
Right.
They were the
in
guys
third
who
act.
finally got fucking owned by John Peters.
They also wrote the script to Doc Hollywood, which is a film that I
love that movie.
Yeah, I see it. It's like a perfect TNT film.
Yeah.
And it has
great David Ogden Steyer's role in that one.
It has the theme song of I Am the One and Only by Chesney Hawk, which is such an outrageously 80s song despite being released in 91. And it is also, I use it as a drop on Fancy Movie Time all the time because it is preposterous. There's a guy in the background who just goes, oh yeah! Like after every single chorus, it rules. So Zemeckis is brought on to direct the live action sequences of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Richard Williams is brought on to do the animated sequences. Yeah. And Williams is a fascinatingly prickly guy.
Yeah.
Right?
He's really interesting because he's not a Disney guy. He's not an MGM guy. He's not a WB guy. He, as a teenager, was like, no, fuck cartoons. He saw Snow White when it came out and was like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. I'm going to make cartoons. And then he saw a Rembrandt painting once and he said, I'm never going to make a cartoon. Fuck this shit. And then he's like, and then I painted for 7 years. And then when I was 19, and so then he moves to England and becomes a commercial animator. And it's kind of his own company. And then he uses the money from that to self-fund his own independent projects.
If correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he did a bunch of really classic title sequences. I think he did the
Pink Panther.
The Pink Panther.
And also Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, I think.
Yes.
Which has the best credits.
It's got incredible credits.
Awful movie.
Bad movie.
R.I.P. Zero Mostel.
You tried your best, buddy.
Given that, of course, you create a lot of comics and stuff like that, can you trace back to any big influential pieces or works or anything like that impressed on you in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was actually really obsessed with newspaper cartoons as a child.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Stupidly and annoyingly, I was obsessed with Dilbert when I was 9. Mm-hmm. I don't know why.
I can see the Far Side character
I've
tattooed on your arm.
I've got literally the Beehive Lady from Far Side tattooed on me. I was about to get to her.
Yeah.
Who I just thought the Far Side was the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah,
even when I didn't, I have all these vivid memories of not understanding them and being like, I'm going to get this one day. I'm going to laugh so fucking hard.
And then sometimes it turns out that they're just not funny.
That's incorrect.
They're funny, but there was nothing to get. It's just no, he just
it's an
thinks
absurd
this is
little
really
drawing.
silly.
It's a silly drawing.
Cow tools.
Yeah, Maddie just turning over cow tools, being like, I will solve you.
Yeah. Sorry, you're right. Just a point of clarification here. For the Far Side, yes, it's always funny.
Yeah,
for other comics, on the other hand, some clunkers.
Sure. Yeah. Because that's definitely the experience of being a kid reading the comic page. Is you get to a Funky Winkerby and you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I bet it's a laugh riot.
Yeah, and then you realize Mallard Fillmore is never going to get funny.
Yeah, but the thing that probably lit my brain up the absolute most in terms of I'm going to do this was reading Life in Hell when I was 11 or 12 for the first time. getting like one of those, because I loved The Simpsons like every other dumb shithead on earth. But like, you know, I would like sit around drawing, watching The Simpsons, and I loved it so much, and I was like obsessed with it. And I think my mom got me one of the Life in Hell books. It was like, this is by the guy from The Thing, and I was like, oh, cool. And I obsessively rereading those books over and over and over and over and over. Yeah. So I think that like it just, but that moment where you do see something visually that you're like, this is it. It does when you've got whatever kind of visual processing thing I've got that makes me draw. It does sort of drive you insane.
Yeah.
You know?
It does kind of sound like Richard Williams was also driven insane by that. I mean, he spent a lot of his life trying to make this movie called The Thief and the Cobbler, which was never finished in its entirety until it was by Harvey Weinstein. And
is there anything that guy can't do?
Yeah. and the movie came out in theaters, and it was so unsuccessful, it was later offered as a free DVD inside of Fruit Loops cereal.
Yeah, it was like a disaster because it was supposed to be like his magnum opus, and every
his
project.
Chex Quest.
And Pepsi Man. It's so tragic because like every project that he did was to fund Thief and the Cobbler, including Roger Rabbit.
And Thief and the Cobbler took like 30 years. Before, it was eventually taken over by a production bond company that then finished it up. And one of the really notable things about Thief and the Cobbler and about a lot of Richard Williams animation is that it's animated what we call on ones. Most Western animation is generally done on twos, which means for every 2 frames of film, you have 1 frame of animation. Japanese animation tends to be on threes, right? So that's even fewer frames per second. So you have 24 frames of film every second. You have 12 frames of animation. Not with Richard Williams. No. You have 24 animated frames every single second. And Thief and the Cobbler is animated that way.
Smooth as butter when you're animating on ones, but it's very difficult to do when you are hand drawing every single frame.
But that's probably twice as hard to make.
Yeah, but that's okay because Richard Williams then cuts a lot of corners. Wait a second, that's not right. Nope, he has fully animated backgrounds that move around. He has Vincent Price like flipping a deck of cards, and you see every single card.
Like in traditional cell animation, the background is like a painting that they just like left there.
Yeah, it's like a set, and then you just have your animated characters.
Yeah.
But like, he'll
animated
have it actually
like, in traditional animation is like insane. You just never see it.
Yeah, he'll have it actually rotating and doing all this. And he does a couple of those little flourishes at the beginning of this movie too, with the kitchen.
The opening sequence of this movie. Well, I watched Roger Rabbit again on like Sunday.
Yeah.
You don't know when we're recording. I'll never tell you. But I watched this again the other day, and that opening sequence, like I was watching it and being, this guy's fucking just showing off.
It is stunning.
Well, because they spent so much money on it too, right? Like he was able to like actually play in this big sandbox. I think this quote kind of sums up Williams pretty well. This is actually from the man himself. I'm in the same business as Goya and Rembrandt. I may be rotten at it with nothing of the same quality or talent, but that's my business. And he passed away in 2019 after a long battle with cancer.
R.I.P. King.
Truly a guy who did everything his own way up until the end.
And he passed away working on another lifelong project that he would never finish, which was his Lysistrata adaptation.
Whoa!
The beginning of which he packaged up as a short film and finally won an Oscar for Best Short Subject called Prologue.
Maddie, I saw you pumping your fist during that quote. Is this a common mentality for cartoonists?
No, but I think the idea of like, I work in a sort of like fundamentally silly genre that is not taken seriously, but I still apply like this sort of like level of craft to it is really nice to hear someone talking about that in a serious way.
Yeah.
And I'm also just pumping my fist because like, if you can be that much of a weird prick, but also still like do what he did and make a living at it.
Yeah.
Like, that just feels like a thing that is almost inaccessible now. That I'm like frankly very jealous of, that you could like make a living sort of doing some animation for major studios, and like I just feel like now it's just you have to, the amount of hustle you have to put into being a visual artist is like unheard of and sucks the life out of you. But so I just think that's a kind of like an inspiring figure and like a aspirational way to like live an artistic life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there's sort of a thing now, I think somebody tweeted it out, but it's something I've kind of put into my soul, which is like, there is no making it anymore in the arts. Yeah. You have to constantly be making it over time. And to a certain extent, I think Williams falls into that category just because he was constantly taking on more and more side gigs to like fund this massive project.
Because he was self-funding, right? Yeah. So he was taking all the, I mean, because he was making commercials. He was doing fine money-wise. Sure. Yeah. And then not finding investors, not doing, and then when he finds investors, it ends up screwing him because then they're like, well, this movie needs to get done. We spent a bunch of money on it. Sure. But for decades, he would just pour his own money.
I won't put money into this unless you put a genie doing 2 William F. Buckley impressions.
2 at minimum.
No. So Maddie, you referenced before that this movie is a miracle in a lot of ways, and I think that it is a miracle because it can only exist in the time that it existed, and at no point thereafter or before. Because Disney was on some really fucking hard times at this point. Yeah. The Black Cauldron had come out in 1985 and bombed into the center of the earth.
And to think like through this is 2 decades basically that they are just floundering because the 70s saw them take. I mean, they were raiding their archives and like Walt Disney at one point wanted to make Pete's Dragon into a movie and then was like, no, this is a bad idea. And then in like 76, they're like, we're going to do Pete's Dragon.
And it should be noted, Walt Disney died in 1966. Yeah. And so at that point, Roy took over the company. And he was not a creative visionary in the way that Walt was.
No, he was always the business boy. And, you know, they were able to get Disney World built and they were able to get some ideas done. But like Disney live action was always kind of dog shit, sometimes in fun ways. The Cat from Outer Space, still kind of a banger.
What's the dog DA one? The Shaggy Dog?
DA. That is a sequel to the Shaggy Dog.
Right.
I think there is no better sequence in film than when that dog cold clocks that guy on the way out of that building.
But like that's emblematic of this very sad, dark age that Disney is in, and their animated movies are not really faring much better. Even really solid movies like The Great Mouse Detective, just don't do very good business.
And then the next year's Little Mermaid, I think, right?
Yeah.
After this, so
it's
like
89,
and then it's like we're off to the races.
Yeah, and then we're in the Renaissance, like
we're in like modern Disney.
Full tilt.
That's the Michael Eisner era after he came over from Paramount.
And I mean, it's funny because The Great Mouse Detective comes out, and then it's like it probably would have done better, but then An American Tail came out, and like just obliterated the competition.
Well,
also,
that's part of why
Spielberg,
you know, Disney had the rights to Roger Rabbit, and Spielberg with Amblin was like, yeah, we'll co-produce this thing. I don't really trust Disney to do the animation well, and that's why they went and got Richard Williams.
Right. Richard Williams, very contemptible of Disney, so much that he was like, I'm going to animate all this in England because I don't want to be anywhere near the Mouse House.
Yeah. It's also so fascinating to have an animator that is not a Disney guy, but is also not a Bluth guy.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like...
A secret third thing?
Bluth also worked on Pete's Dragon.
Yeah. Sure did.
Another movie that had hybrid live action and animated sequences and looks terrible and is terrible.
And in a lot of ways, Jeffrey Katzenberg was just like, this studio is failing.
Yeah.
Let's go back to basics, which I guess means Mary Poppins and Pete's Dragon, which is let's put live action and animation next to each other.
Yeah.
But in any other period of time, like they would not have been this experimental with their IP, especially after the Renaissance.
It feels like I think similarly. I think about the film Lilo and Stitch, a movie that I think is very fun and good, and is animated very beautifully. And like, there's all these interviews with people who worked on it, and they're like, we were at some satellite animation studio, and they did not know what we were doing, and they left us alone, and we kind of got away with something. And I think about that with this movie, where it's kind of like, no one was paying enough attention. Right.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't any meddling. It was kind of like, we're doing this thing. We're just kind of like, they left them alone. They sort of got away with it on some level.
Yeah. And a lot of that was because of Spielberg's power. Here, right?
Yeah.
He is the king of the box office. Everybody wanted to be in with Steven Spielberg. Everybody wanted Spielberg to owe them a favor. Everybody wanted to be in the business of Spielberg, which is why so many different kinds of cartoons appear in this. It's not just Disney and Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah, we got Fleischer in there.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read the whole list.
The Fleischer guy is
holy
bopping around.
shit.
Yeah, it made me so happy.
Spielberg, I just imagine like Spielberg going into all these studios, like busting down the doors and be like, I need Felix the cat. But we got
like dusting off the cobwebs, like, oh, thank God.
Somebody take him, please.
Had the weird Hungarian-American Felix the Cat movie come out at this point?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
A movie I watched that I think also had taken off TV.
Very horny film.
Insanely fucked up movie where Felix the Cat is bopping around heavy metal for some reason.
Yeah.
That was 1989, which
year
after. It was Roger Rabbit put Felix the Cat back on the map, baby.
I'm wondering, because that movie is another seminal thing to me visually. I don't know why. I was like really obsessed with it. And there's like the guy that looks like Mysterio is the villain. And he's like rescuing like bikini babes. Like,
it's a very weird, very horny movie. And I think maybe they saw the success of Roger Rabbit and it's like, whoa, my God, we can make these horny. Let's do it.
Yeah, hit us with the list, AJ.
I'm going to Hungary right now.
So we have Fleischer Studios. We got Harvey Comics. We got King Feature Syndicate. We got Felix the Cat Productions.
That's its own thing.
Very busy. Very fielding calls. I imagine Spielberg walked in like 3 tumbleweeds. Just like assaulted him on the way in.
It's just a single phone that connects directly to Hungary. Just one guy. Hello, yes, I am Felix the Cat.
It is me, Felix. Give me bikini babe.
Hungarian accent at all.
This is going to Russia.
We have Turner Entertainment.
Right,
Actually,
this was before Turner got rolled into Warner Brothers.
And then, of course, we have Universal Pictures and Walter Lantz Productions. So it was basically Spielberg, like, use his immense power to, like, cobble all this together. And I can't imagine there being a director with that much power today to be able to do that, mostly because it's the studios that
Steven
have that
Spielberg
power.
When he did Ready Player One.
That's right. That is right. A true Roger Rabbit movie.
So, honestly, what I said before, like it was a miracle, it was kind of a twofold thing, which was, the time and place it was made. But the other thing is that it is not Ready Player One.
Yeah,
like,
yes, and it could have been.
It so could have just been because of all this, like slop for the hog trough.
Yeah,
But it was not. It's like it's actually like everything's deployed in a way that is interesting and funny.
Yeah. All the polls are really interesting because it's not like you don't see every big star. Like some of the background characters are like the cows that Walt Disney used to like to animate.
Honestly,
I love those cows.
I think
I wanted one Far Side cow. Just
for my money, I think the only animated movie that has kind of managed to recapture this since was the first Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
Not Wreck-It Ralph 2, which is a disaster.
When he broke the internet.
All of these characters are being brought in to enhance the world without calling attention to themselves as pieces of intellectual property. The point is that this is a coherent and cohesive world where all of these cartoon characters just happen to coexist with each other.
I think the only movie that has come close to Roger Rabbit is the Chip and Dale movie for me. The most recent one that I think Mulaney and Andy Samberg did together. It's basically it is a noir set in a Hollywood where toons have their own sort of thing. The villain of that turns out to be the original Sonic design with the weird teeth. It is a deeply strange film.
You're describing a real thing?
No, this came out on Disney Plus. You can watch it right now.
You mean the from the movie Sonic?
Yes, from the Sonic movie.
The weird Sonic?
Yeah, he's called Ugly Sonic in the movie.
What? This is real?
That's the Judge Doom of that movie. And it's so fun watching this.
Is this real?
It's real. Honestly, it's a pretty good time. It's not
chat,
Roger Rabbit, but like it's trying to do very much the same thing.
When you look at like
Rabbit.
Deadpool and Wolverine, it's all like jokes about like the stuff that the studio is doing.
Right.
And it's like that.
It's not.
I guess it's funny if you followed the fucking news about the movie being made.
What that does is it completely bails out the stakes of everything happening.
Yeah,
right? You're just like when someone's just yelling, "You're watching a movie." It's like, well, but if they're like, "You're watching," like we're in a movie. And you're watching that, like I don't know, it just feels
because this
is like a subtle distinction.
What Roger Rabbit does,
it's like a world that
it makes it. It's
stakes.
Like, you know when all the cartoons were being made, that's just this era of old Hollywood where there was a ghetto that was full of cartoon characters,
kind of labor exploitation.
Who were all actors.
I mean, to compare it to another thing, Hail Caesar, similar kind of thing where it's taking this coherent world and applying a new filter to it that makes you recontextualize the history of that moment and brings in real contemporary history in a weird and twisted way. And we're going to talk more about this when we recap the movie. But
would that it were so simple, Josh.
We just got
trippingly.
We got well, speaking of casting, because we've now talked about several of the tunes that are in this movie. I wanted to talk a little bit about the alternate choices that they had for the leads of this movie.
Yeah. So in the very earliest versions of this, when they had different directors and stuff attached to it, you know, and they're 1981, 1982, Pete Renaday was the guy playing Eddie Valiant. And Pete Renaday is a guy that has come up on this podcast because he's a frequent voice actor on Adventures in Odyssey. He was that really dark-sided Iowa farm dad.
Oh,
yeah, he was.
That was one of the scariest characters in Adventures in Odyssey history.
He is totally not a star. He is just a fucking long-time voice actor who has done everything.
Yeah, the first thing that comes up here is the GoBots wiki.
But then when they're actually making the movie, Pete Renaday was never considered for the final thing. He just was doing the test stuff.
And Paul Rubens did a couple of test things as Roger. But
and
he
then
was
from
replaced.
then to the point where the movie came out, his career exploded. Pee-wee's Playhouse came out and
so he
changed the world.
Yeah. And so it ended up being Charles Fleischer in the role of Roger. And fun thing about Charles Fleischer is that he would show up every day on set wearing a giant rabbit outfit.
Yeah, he made them make a costume for him.
So he could do the lines and people would have something to respond to.
He sounds like he was a bit much on set.
Yeah, it does. It does
People
feel
do
that
not
way.
talk about him with like a smile on their face.
The sole exception is Christopher Lloyd, who has nothing but really wonderful things to say about him. But Christopher Lloyd is also at a time in his life where he has nice things to say about everybody.
Christopher Lloyd is also a cartoon character whenever he walks onto set. So they were both kind of doing the same thing.
They were vibing.
I mean, imagine being Christopher Lloyd right now. Would you have anything bad to say about anything that's ever happened to you?
No. There's
I'd just be vibing.
There's a really
incredibly.
wonderful YouTube video. I'm not sure if it's still around, but it had like 500 views. Christopher Lloyd did a community theater production of Death of a Salesman in like his hometown. And there's just this YouTube video of just somebody with a camcorder, and there's a crowd of people around him, and he's just sitting in a chair, and they're like, and they're very close to him. Like they're like it's like he's like holding court, and they're like, what's it like to play Willie Loman? He's like, it's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. And it's very heartwarming.
Well, it's so funny because like in the 70s, he was around here in New York as like, if you did a Brecht play, he was in it for some reason. Didn't matter who was directing it, what if it was at BAM, if it was at the Public, wherever. Christopher Lloyd was in every single Brecht production.
Wow.
That's cool.
He's just
a cool guy.
He's just a cool guy. And here's some other cool guys. We got Spielberg originally wanted Harrison Ford to be Eddie Valiant.
That would work. Yeah.
Which I think would be great because he would not give into any of the sentimentality in the way that Hoskins also doesn't.
Right.
You know, he would probably treat Roger with the right amount of contempt in order to make the movie work. But their second pick was one Chevy Chase.
Absolutely not.
Which would have destroyed this movie entirely.
Yeah, no. He would have been too clownish.
Third, we got Bill Murray.
Same problem, I think.
Who missed the opportunity because in order to book Bill Murray for a gig during this time, and maybe still
he still has this.
You still call him directly.
You still call him directly.
He's got his own toll-free number.
His own toll-free number, and I guess he just missed the message.
You didn't know about this, Maddie?
No.
Dial a bill.
Hey, why would I know about
I don't know. You seem
It's just a thing people know about Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Like when he used to go around Brooklyn and just show up at people's house parties.
That.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he would take people's fries off their plates and say no one would ever believe you.
It turns out a lot of people believed them.
Yeah.
He was quite wrong.
I think I saw him on the street the other day, but
He took one of your fries.
yeah.
I don't believe that.
So Eddie Murphy also got offered the role, and he was like, I don't understand these tunes thing. And then he later went, oh, I should have done that. I think Eddie Murphy would have been actually really good in the movie.
I really can't see anyone except for Bob Hoskins out of that set of people.
Yeah, you need a guy who plays King Lear in there. It's funny you brought up Hail Caesar because it's a very Coen-esque pitch. The whole movie, I thought. Yeah. That's what I was thinking about. It is like what's happening is funny. Nobody is making jokes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like stuff that is funny is happening, but everybody's taking everything deathly serious.
Right.
Yeah, and even the ones who are making jokes are doing so because they're tunes and they have to. Like Roger can't help it.
Yeah, like it's like a horrible tick.
Yeah. It makes everyone around him upset.
Look at this sick rabbit. You laugh at this sick rabbit.
Right.
So like having a guy like this is literally the Coens almost exclusively try to get people who've done Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Because it's like it is a similar pitch of like talking very specifically in a way that is funny but not jokey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and playing the text.
And being
as opposed
trained
to-
on technique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So having a guy like Hoskins is, I feel like, so integral to the movie.
Absolutely.
And just to show you they had no idea what to do with Eddie Valiant, here's just a quick list of everyone else who was considered. Robin Williams, Charles Grodin, Don Lane, Jack Nicholson, Sylvester Stallone, Edward James Olmos, Ed Harris, and Wallace Shawn.
Huh.
Wally would have been good.
I think Wallace
Wally would have killed
Shawn
it.
would've been
Yeah.
good.
Bob Hoskins is the
But
British
Bob Hoskins
Wallace
is the
Shawn.
one.
Yeah,
He was,
no.
I don't know. There's just something about him. I'm sure in like the screen test, you just saw Roger come alive just by his acting.
Charles Grodin, I could sort of see it just
Yeah.
because he's so fucking good in Great Muppet Caper. But again, I think the reason he works so well in that is that he is bringing a certain cartoonishness to it, which is not what you want for this role.
Absolutely not.
No, you
He's
wanna-
not a toon.
You want a
He's
guy
not.
who's rumpled.
Yeah.
And Hoskins is rumpled.
Yeah.
He's
You
been
want to smell the whiskey coming off him in
Yeah.
a big, big way.
Well, it's funny because it's like this is a stock character that Hoskins has at this point. He's played this grizzled American detective
I
before.
always forget that Bob Hoskins is British.
Yeah.
But basically, the film wraps and then it spends 14 months in post-production.
Which is way shorter than I
Which
would
is
have thought.
so much shorter.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah,
considering
looking at
everything
this.
they had to do.
Because I would have described that as with an animation and an animated film production.
Yes.
is
Yeah.
starts, right? Like-
that's start time for
Because
it, yeah.
well, and you can see this with some of the like special features that they had on the DVD and everything. Like they're really not animating until it's all finished filming. They're not in the, you know, when you do something that has a lot of CGI, not so much today because of the way that we're doing things now, but like generally it's like, oh, you have a bunch of special effects that has to be planned out in pre-pro. Right? All that is set out a long time ago. But with this, the animation is like, well, we're going to see what you got with your robots and everything, and then we're going to put stuff on top of it. And you can see Zemeckis has such a clear vision for what the animation is, and he's just walking through each scene with Williams and being like, this is what Roger's going to be doing here. Oh, here he's going to get a little springy, or here, you know, like it's crazy
and,
to
and
watch.
setting up little visual things here and there. There will be pieces of the set that move in certain ways. Something gets hit, something gets pushed, something that gets moved. And all of that is going to give the animators the ability to track that shit when they are putting the final product together.
Oh, but I was thinking about there's the scene where Eddie and Roger are like handcuffed together and he keeps dunking Roger in the sink.
Yeah.
And watching that scene, all I could think about was like, there's so much shit.
Yeah.
Like the jalopy of this scene that they're trying to like hold together of like, because the weasels are walking around doing stuff.
Right.
Like causing stuff in the set, like sacks of paper to fall over and like doors to open. And then Eddie's like dunking this cartoon.
The camera is moving
and
the whole
camera's
time.
moving.
Yes.
Like the amount of shit they had to do.
And also
is
all
just
the guns.
astonishing. And
Yeah.
the guns are floating
They're all
around.
puppetered on little strings
So,
and shit.
yeah, that's the thing is like they got real puppeteers to work on this. They realized pretty quickly we can't just have stagehands doing this. Although there are a few stagehands who do some pretty incredible work. Everyone is doing incredible work. The extras are amazing in this
Yeah.
movie.
Truly.
Like, but for like a lot of the floating objects, like someone's carrying a gun and it's a cartoon weasel, they have actual marionetteers up in catwalks above the
that's
set,
so cool.
just
Walking
dancing the
them
object
around.
around. For
Yeah.
the penguin waiters, they have trays on sticks with little slots in the ground for them to
my
be able to walk
God.
through. Like, you know how the newest Planet of the Apes, you can watch it now without any of the CGI? So you can just
you?
watch the performances of the guy playing gorillas and stuff.
That rocks.
I really wish that there was something like that for Roger Rabbit, where you could just watch all of it.
There's some videos
There's-
of like people of like how the setups work.
Yeah.
I would just love to watch the entire movie.
Yeah.
It was really incredible to me to watch this movie, and like there was one special effect I thought was not great, and that was for the whole movie.
Yeah.
which is when Eddie goes to Toontown and he's holding a cartoon gun, and because of the logistics of that, he starts holding a prop gun that looks like a cartoon gun, and it looks really stupid and bad. And I'm kind of like, and I was like, oh, that looks bad, but I was like, wait, there's like 700 effect shots in this movie.
Yeah.
And,
And
and it's from the 80s, and only one looks bad, which
It's
is crazy.
1988. Like,
Yeah.
what?
It's
Crazy.
unreal. And
So
also
much
to get rid
money.
of that gun pretty quick because I think he realized he like throws it away. It's like, nah, not gonna deal with that.
And you can watch pretty much the whole Toontown sequence that Bob Hoskins goes through without the special effects. There is someone who put that on YouTube
cool.
and pieced together all of the behind the scenes footage.
And
It's
he's just
awesome.
on a blue screen, right? Like he's just void.
Yeah, but like you can watch him hanging from the flagpole and just prying his own fingers off of the flagpole one by one.
Oh, that's so cool. It really,
I'm so jealous of his ability as an actor.
Yeah, this movie it's just a goddamn magic trick.
Yeah.
And it releases on June 22nd, 1988, and it's a huge hit. 351 million worldwide in 1988 money.
I mean, this
Crazy.
revitalizes animation in America.
Yeah.
People start clamoring for more animated commercials, more animated TV shows. Of course, Spielberg goes on to produce some of the best animated TV shows
I was
in
going
the
to
early
say,
90s.
Spielberg enters his like Toontown.
Yeah. Like after years and
Tiny
years and
Toontown.
years
Tiny
of
Toontown.
fucking Hanna-Barbera, everyone
Yeah.
was sick of that shit. No one liked making it. No one liked watching it. No one liked acting in it. Like, it just sucked.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you have one of the most complicated pieces of animation come out. It's super, super successful, and it makes people want to see more cartoons.
Yeah.
And then we get Cool World.
Cool world.
So cool. Have we ever talked about Flintstones on the Rocks, which is sort of like the death knell, I think, for me, of like Flintstones movies? It was about the Flintstones getting a divorce. It's like the worst thing I've
the
ever
live
seen in my
action
life.
one, or?
No, it was a cartoon. It
one
was
of
a
the-
Hanna-Barbera
Because
like
they ran the
TV
Flintstones into the
movie.
ground because they did, Flintstones Meet the Jetsons, which is actually okay.
Pretty okay.
But then they did like the variety show series where Pebbles and Bam Bam are teenagers, and
Oh
it's
my
mostly
God.
like Captain Caveman sketches. Horrible nonsense.
Fred and Wilma get divorced?
Almost.
I mean, wouldn't you leave Fred?
yeah, I
mean,
I would
absolutely.
leave Fred in a fucking instant.
So yeah, it wins 4 Academy Awards,
Yeah.
including one for our main man Richard Williams.
Yeah, he gets a special award for that.
Yeah.
Because what they've done here is basically magic.
Yeah.
And spoilers for the rest of this. Really great movie. Perhaps one of my favorite movies I've ever
That doesn't
seen
surprise
in my
me
life.
one
Yeah.
bit.
This was tailor-made for me.
I know.
And had I watched this when I was 10 years old, this would have been my entire personality
Yeah.
up until this
Yeah.
very moment.
You probably would have dated a lot more redheads.
Brian? I dated a lot of redheads.
I know. Even more.
So let's talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Who did it?
the movie-
Do they know things? Let's find out.
This movie opens with what is basically a pastiche Looney Tune. In this world, there's something called the Baby Herman cartoons.
Yes.
Baby Herman is, as one would expect, a baby.
Yeah.
A cute
Sort-
little...
Sort of like Sweet Pea in the Popeye cartoons.
Yeah.
Cute little baby who's always getting into all sorts of trouble, and Roger Rabbit is the baby's caretaker.
He was rescued from a laboratory.
Is that the lore?
And
He says something like, or it's like back to the lab with
that's
you. Yeah.
right.
And so we get, just to open the movie, this phenomenal sequence that is
good.
just on its own as a short.
good.
This is one of the best of this like genre that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This is right on the level of like the very best Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Richard Williams being totally on his bullshit
Yes.
too. It's
Yes.
like checkerboards, moving
Everything's
backgrounds,
rotating around the perspective
reflections.
The perspective is insane, and like although there's really like obscure angles of
Yeah.
like the room, the dimensions of it are
There's
like
the box of knives that flips over, and every knife is unique.
yes,
It's a different color handle
they're
and
all
shape.
shining and like showing reflections in them. It's nuts.
So just to kind of lay down what is going on here. Baby Herman is loose in the kitchen trying to get into the cookie jar.
Yeah.
And Roger Rabbit is doing everything in his power to protect Baby Herman from the various lethal obstacles that stand in Baby Herman's way.
Yeah.
But of course, because it's a cartoon, the baby's totally safe and Roger keeps getting injured.
Right. Classic
What if-
Baby's Day Out stuff.
What if Magoo was being protected by a ghost?
and I like that Baby Herman's mom is like the later Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Yeah.
Where it's just, you just see her hosiery and the
Yeah.
bottom of her skirt.
Just curious to hear like on the technicals, Maddie, because obviously being somebody who draws
Yeah.
all the time, what jumped out at you visually about all of this? We talked about a little bit, but like other big things.
I mean, honestly, it was just like the sort of like the fundamental animation of it is so good. Like the squashing and stretching they do on Roger's like incredible.
Yeah.
The way that he moves is like so smooth. And I don't know. I doubt they did this one on the ones because that'd be too much money probably.
I think this one is on the.
is it?
I could go
Fuck
back.
me,
I could go
maybe.
back and watch and go frame by frame. But yeah,
I remember even being as a kid being like completely struck by the way the sequence worked. It's just like it moves so smoothly and it's so good, and like it's shaded in a way that animation is very rarely allowed to be lit.
Yeah.
Like it's like really incredible lighting, just like fundamentally like a perfect piece of animation.
Yeah, and it's got those little jokes in there too, right? Where it's like from the classic Tex Avery things, it's all a lot of sign jokes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff like the oven is called hotter in hell.
Yeah.
And then the heat settings on it are volcano heat, and then the one after that is well done. Which is just, it's such a good little thing. And then like the vacuum is called a Suckalux, and very importantly, all of these items come from Acme. There's a mistake at the end because Roger Rabbit starts improvising. Yep. Not his lines, but the little things that go around his head. He has birdies and not stars.
Instead of stars, and he's fucked it all up.
And so
And this is presumably all shot in one take. That's what they like.
Yes.
They do the entire sequence, and then because he has the wrong thing swirling, they're like, "Well, fuck, we have to do it all
Every
over
episode
again."
of Baby Herman is an homage to Rope.
Yeah.
Because now
watch out, baby Herman.
immediately
We got a dead body in the trunk.
immediately we break the frame here. We're not in a cartoon anymore. Now, Roger, of course, is a cartoon, but his head is in the middle of a real refrigerator, and he is talking to a real director.
Yes.
And this is what we hear.
Cut! What the hell was wrong with that take? Nothing with you, Baby Herman. You were great. You were perfect. You were better than perfect. Just Roger. He keeps blowing his lines. Roger, what's this? A tweeting bird. A tweeting bird. Roger, read this. Look what it says. It says rabbit gets clunked. Rabbit sees stars. Not birds. Stars! Can we lose the playback, please? Roger, you're killing me. Crying out loud, Roger. How many times do we have to do this damn scene? No! I'm being my trailer. Taking a nap. Excuse me, Toots.
And all of this is one take.
Yes.
This is a giant Spielberg-esque oneer. When they started working on this movie, they were talking to animators and like, yeah, you're going to have to keep the camera static so that you can animate it properly. And then Richard Williams, who is insane, was like, oh no, you can move the camera. I did a commercial once where we moved the camera. We can do that. Yeah. So he just never stopped moving
The amount of camera movement, that was the other thing that really struck me about the movie, just generally, was like, the camera never stops moving.
Yes.
And the animation keeps up in a way that's like,
Yes. Well,
I don't know. It's
superhuman.
it's crazy.
The thing about the camera movement is that the camera is moving in the way that cartoons move.
Yeah. It is mimicking the style of it too. And it is also very interesting that as the movie goes along and as Bob Hoskins' character, Eddie Valiant, starts becoming more like, fond of the tunes, a lot of the shots with him in the initial thing are actually pretty stagnant on him.
On him, yes.
Yeah.
And then as the film goes along, they get more manic as he starts adapting to it. Just want to do a quick shout out here. That director, the character's name is Raoul J. Raoul. Okay. And he is played by Joel Silver.
Yeah.
That is famous mega producer Joel Silver.
That's like the most meta joke that they get with it here.
There's one coming up in the next scene that I thought was very silly. But yeah, we follow Baby Herman.
Exactly.
Back to his trailer.
That voice that we heard there, the like, hey, Toots, that is the real voice of Baby Herman.
Yeah.
He is not, in fact, this small, sweet angel baby. He's a grown-ass man.
Yeah. This feels almost like an archetypal joke at this point.
Yeah,
right.
But like this must be the first instance of that or something
And
like.
it does it really well.
so good.
There used to be an old joke that Shirley Temple was 40 years old and they kept her short with
Right.
coffee and cigarettes.
Yes.
Right.
And so I think it's kind of like, it's like riffing on that, or like Mickey Rooney, who was just
Sure.
like, he was always very short. He could play young for a long time, but he was just like this nasty little pervert always,
Yeah.
and everyone hated
It's
him.
the Simpsons stunt doubles from that one episode where Bart gets adopted by Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
It's like the Romanian stunt double.
Yeah.
So it is Hollywood, 1947. We see this in a subtitle, and R.K. Maroon, the head of Maroon Cartoons, has a problem on his hands. Namely, these fucking Baby Herman cartoons keep going over budget because Roger Rabbit can't fucking keep his shit straight. And so what he has done here is he has called in a private investigator named Eddie
Valiant.
Eddie Valiant, played by Bob Hoskins, of
no
course.
relation to Prince Valiant.
True.
I looked it up.
And ultimately, he has a plan for what he can do, what Eddie can do to help get Roger focused, and back on track.
How much do you know about show business, Mr. Valiant?
Only there's no business like it. No business I know.
Damn it.
Yeah, there's no business more expensive. I'm 25 grand over budget on the latest Baby Herman cartoon. You saw the rabbit blowing his lines. He can't keep his mind in his work. You know why?
One too many refrigerators dropped on his head.
Ah, he's a toon. You can drop anything you want on his head. He'll shake it off. He'll break his heart. Goes to pieces just like you and me. Read that.
This dialogue is so good.
Yes.
Seen cooing over calamari with not-so-new sugar daddy was Jessica Rabbit, wife of maroon cartoon star Roger. What's this got to do with me?
You're the private detective. You figure it out.
Look, I don't have time for this.
Look, Valiant, his wife's poison, but he thinks she's Betty Crocker. I want you to follow her. Get me a couple of nice, juicy pictures I can wise the rabbit up with.
Forget it. I don't work Toontown.
What's wrong with Toontown? Every Joe loves Toontown.
They get Joe to do the job, because I ain't.
God!
So we've already talked a fair bit about the quality of the animation,
Yeah.
and we'll
Yeah.
continue to do so.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to take a moment to praise the script.
Yeah,
This
it's
is-
really seminal.
This is a really... It's the same root. You say seminal when referring to semen.
No, but it was written by semen. That's why it's a seminal film.
So
It was written in semen.
It was written in gum.
I've heard disappearing ink.
Disappearing and reappearing semen.
You gotta write quick. That shit solidifies.
But it's so efficient. It's Hollywood efficient.
yes.
Yeah.
Almost too much. But the absurdity of it all
That's right.
is
Yeah.
what
The
grounds
pitch
it.
of this thing is like so perfect.
Like the whole, like, I don't know if you've seen Twister, for instance. I
Yes.
finally watched Twister for the
You went
first
to
The
the
time.
original?
suck zone.
The original Twister. And there's a part where they're reminiscing about all the storms they're chasing. Like, oh yeah, the Cat 3s, those were nuts. Oh, and the Cat 4s. And
those
then,
were
like,
even more nuts.
And then like the new wife of the guy who's planning to leave the business of storm chasing, she's like, well, what about a Category 5? And then Helen Hunt like has to get up from the table, and everyone's like, we don't talk about Category 5s. And here it's just, it's like what's wrong with that? Oh, his brother was killed by a toon.
yeah, but it's also done in that sort of very very particular
exactly.
voice, which then it puts your mind into a certain thing. And also, if that didn't do it, then perhaps the prop in the background, which is the literal Maltese falcon,
Oh, I did not
which is
notice
just
that.
one of the awards in the background,
That's so funny.
might clue you in, because they took a lot of inspiration for this from Chinatown, but they kind of wanted to
Yes.
make it into a prototypical noir.
At one point, one of the drafts of the script was a treatment for a Chinatown sequel.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the two Jakes happened. They're like, we're not gonna bother.
yeah.
Maybe three Jakes?
But they're locked
Oops, all
the
Jakes?
fuck in, right?
Yeah.
But Hoskins saying it's like no business I know is like the most perfect line reading imaginable.
Yeah, there's no fucking wink in it at all.
No, not a.
And that's
It's almost like he doesn't want to say it.
and that's what I think is the most important sort of piece that makes
Yeah.
this side of the film work. is
Imagine
that,
Chevy Chase saying that.
or like if they were doing the fucking Ryan Reynolds wink, right? This would be unwatchable. But they're taking it
Like
so
no business I know.
but they're taking it so fucking seriously.
I wish
you know?
everyone listening could see the face you just made while doing the Ryan Reynolds
The
impression.
shittiest little face. Yeah.
It's like you were taken over by the ghost of this guy.
I think
Oh,
that
no.
we're gonna have to go to Toontown pretty soon.
No.
And once we get there, what?
Kind of looks like 70s Ted Bundy.
Well, okay. Side tangent, Ryan Reynolds. There is kind of a dead eye, like behind the eyes thing with him
absolutely.
sometimes
Yeah.
that does that is a little unnerving.
Oh, is Ryan Reynolds unnerving in his weird personality?
It is very funny in watching Wrexham where there are moments where like actual like emotion comes
Yeah.
through, and then you see him just like shove it down. And it's I don't know. It's
You let that
if
through
he were in this
during-
movie, I would burn every copy.
He would have been far too young.
Ryan Reynolds played Baby Herman in this film.
But
to teach him how to smoke.
just to extend sort of like, how back and forth this movie is, expertly bouncing ping pong like between the animated piece and the live action piece.
Yeah.
We get this phenomenal visual animated gag here where fucking Dumbo
Jump
shows
scare.
up outside
yeah.
the window.
Jump scare Dumbo.
Like that Dumbo.
Yeah,
the
'cause
elephant.
You're watching the Hollywood backlot, and so you're
Yeah.
seeing all the actor. It's like, watching Hail Caesar, and you're just seeing a bunch of guys dressed as centurions and then a bunch of guys dressed as pharaohs or whatever.
And again, just to emphasize how well these two pieces work together, you know, Bob Hoskins like goes under the desk because he's so afraid of Dumbo.
Yeah.
But then Maroon sort of calms him down, but be like, hey, don't worry about it. They just hang out. You know what? They work for peanuts. And then, of course, you get a gag of him throwing peanuts out at Dumbo, and you see Dumbo eating the peanuts and going down into the back lot. It's like, this is magical.
It is magical, and also because there's a bunch of plants around the window, and when Dumbo flies past them, the plants go,
They bluff.
yes,
Yep.
they part, and it's just
everything. There's a part where Roger later is like pounding on the desk. He's just hitting his fist on it, and you can see objects just sort of subtly shaking.
Like they don't do this level of care is not there now when they just CGI shit in. They just don't worry about it, and everything feels fake.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, nothing has weight.
yeah.
Wait, that's the word. Yeah.
And there's a whole part where he's like right before the Dumbo jump scare where there's like we talk about the extras in this movie, right? They're unloading these crates full of instruments that are also tunes, and they drop them, and then the tunes start like running around, and you see the extras, each one of them responding in turn to a different instrument, and then actually catching them. One guy, like the saxophone, really fucks up one of the guys. I'm really worried about that one crewman.
You see a bunch of the Fantasia ballerina animals around.
Yeah,
and the hippo sits on the thing and the guy goes like skyrocketing into the air.
Which again,
he doesn't come back down. He's just in space.
Such
It's him and Leica.
Such a good visual payoff for a spoken setup where he's like, hey, don't worry about it. We got all the guys from Fantasia on loan. And then you see the fucking brooms from the Magician's Nephew sequence and the hippo. And it's like, this movie is so tight.
And it's so funny because, of course, in old Hollywood, your studio had the contract to the actor. So it wasn't like you make a contract per movie. It's like, well, I have my 5-picture deal over at MGM. I can't do Warner Brothers unless they loan me out. And for this movie, they actually had to get cartoon characters loaned out to them in real life.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
So Bob Hoskins, or should I say Eddie, takes the job. He does decide to do it for $100.
Yeah, because he's short on money. He has a bar tab he has to take care of.
And so he hops on a trolley and takes it over to a bar where his beloved Dolores works.
Yeah, he rides on the back with some 14-year-old tramps.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, who needs a car in LA? We have the greatest public transit system in the world.
And importantly, this is like a moment where we've seen him be like very like he does not like tunes, right? But this is not a bad guy.
Right.
He helps that kid onto the trolley. It's the save the cat moment of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's a funny joke for people in the know about Los Angeles at that time and what happens. But no, it's also the plot of the movie.
It's both. Because this movie is constantly working on multiple levels. And there's a throwaway gag where they have these cigarettes, but then they bring it back because Bob Hoskins is like, hey, kids, thanks for the cigarettes. So, he is now at the bar with Dolores. And like I said, he and Dolores have a romantic history together, right? But it seemed that at some point there was a big traumatic moment that kind of fractured the relationship because he has a real sore spot about tunes.
Tomorrow's Friday, Eddie. You know what happens here on Friday?
Fish special?
Well, my boss checks the books on Friday. And if I don't have that money I gave you back in the till, I'm gonna lose my job.
Don't bust a button, Dolores. You've only got one left.
$50? Where's the rest?
Well, it's only a snoop job away. You got that camera of yours? Mine's in the shop.
Wouldn't be the pawn shop by any chance, would it?
Oh, come on, Dolores. You need the other 50, I need the camera.
Just like Heart Condition, this camera and the film that is already in it becomes not a major plot point, but an important character beat for him. And this is a folding postcard format camera, which usually your viewfinder is a little prism on the lens itself, so you kind of look over the camera to take your picture. And so here, Hoskins has to kind of fudge it and just sort of pretend that he's looking through it when he's taking the pictures later.
So what we hear in this moment is that he would normally never take a gig like this. He doesn't work with tunes. He doesn't work for tunes. And we discover in this scene what the reason is for that.
So what's his problem?
Toon killed his brother. Dropped the piano on his head.
So again, economy of writing.
Yeah.
We now have his entire motivation, most of the backstory that we need. We know who he is as a character and why we ought to care about him. And we're ready to go along for the ride at this point, I think.
I can't believe that we've only covered 2 Bob Hoskins movies on this podcast. And in both of them, he is a grisly detective who is racist against a minority.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he played that role a number of times.
Yeah, it was his bread and butter.
They really do racialize the hell out of the tunes here.
They do.
They do.
Which is interesting considering, like animations like sort of checkered past with regards to minstrelry.
Yeah, the gloves. They make Roger's gloves yellow.
They make I noticed that. I was like, that's a really interesting choice to make them yellow because it was before it was sort of in the public consciousness again that like this was directly downstream of minstrel performing.
Right.
But the movie seems very aware of it, like it makes the Cotton Club,
Yeah.
Eddie needs to go and get some sort of compromising photographs of Jessica. Jessica is Roger Rabbit's wife.
Yeah.
And so he heads down to the piano bar where Jessica is going to be performing.
And then we get one of the most insane shots in cinema history of Donald Duck and Daffy Duck doing a piano duel
Dueling
against each
pianos.
other.
Playing physical pianos, sitting on physical benches that are all rocking and moving, and the
Unbelievable.
keys are getting pressed accurately.
Even if it was just an animated sequence, the animation would be so good.
Right.
There's such funny stuff happening. Like I think it's Donald plays the piano with his ass, and his tail turns into a finger.
Yeah.
And it's like
Because this is what's so good about this is that it's not just a visual gag. This is grounded in the specificities of Donald and Daffy, who are basically alternate versions of each other.
Yeah.
And it's grounded in the best cartoons that were ever made, which are all the ones where a Looney Tunes character plays a piano.
it's also, I believe, the Tex Avery Daffy Duck, who's like the best looking.
Yeah, it's got kind of a different head shape.
He's got a different head shape. He's a lot more noodly.
Yeah.
It's like almost Fleischery in its noodliness. But it's like my favorite design of Daffy, who's like way more of like a demon.
It almost didn't make it into the movie either.
No shit.
So Zemeckis,
It's a hard thing to negotiate.
Yeah, so Zemeckis actually had to have the entire other Daffy animation created with the other design in order to get this one in the movie.
That's incredible.
Really?
Yeah, because then they showed them back to back, and
There was a lot with Daffy and Donald had to have similar amounts of screen time. Mickey and Bugs Bunny had to have like the exact same amount of screen time.
Yeah, and it's important that the piano duel ends in a stalemate, right?
Yeah.
But it's this extraordinary like naval battle. It was like they master and commander the stage briefly,
and Donald for some reason puts on a pair of devil horns.
Yeah, it's such like an incredible sort of visual and like experiential thing in the movie, but it's also like such a good like world building thing where they get like carted off because at the end it's like, oh, it's like a vaudeville act,
right?
And it's also like about like the labor situation for cartoons, and also like I mentioned that they're in the Cotton Club for cartoons,
right?
Where all the performers are tunes, all the clientele are human beings.
Yeah, they can't walk around in the real world, but they can come up through a tunnel or something up into this speakeasy where they're acting on stage, they're working as bartenders.
Yeah. Like they can live in their ghetto, they go in the back lot, and they go to the, I can't remember what the name of the club is, but like, that's it.
Yeah.
And
they're serving bourbon on the rocks with actual rocks.
Oh my God.
And I love that they have
Such a good
Eddie
gag.
Valiant realize what's going to happen because he's had enough experience with cartoons. It's like, ice!
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't because that's funnier, right?
Goes, tunes.
But the octopus bartender, I love the octopus bartender.
That is marionette puppeting. Oh my
the
God.
glass is in the air.
And it's real glass.
I
It's
know.
people. I
Real liquid. There's fluids.
It's the real fluids.
And you got all the trays, and those are the stick puppets, coming up from the ground. And then you have Betty Boop coming by as a waitress.
Betty Boop says hi.
It's like washed up Betty Boop.
She's still black and white.
Drawn together, Betty Boop.
The thing about Betty Boop here, right, is that she's no longer the hotness. She still kind of has it, but there's somebody out there who's much hotter, and that, of course...
And she and Eddie actually have like a positive relationship, too. Yeah.
It's like,
reasonably. They know each other.
Yeah.
But the reason, of course, that she's no longer the hottest person, the hottest lady, the hottest gal, is that there's a much hotter gal. And that, of course, is Jessica Rabbit.
Who you see entering, it's like high-heeled shoe, calf, and then just cans.
Just boobs.
Like that they enter before the rest of her does.
I think it should come as no surprise to our listeners that Roger Ebert loved this movie.
Oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit here about this sequence, because Jessica Rabbit performs a solo number here, and the target of this performance is, of course, Marvin Acme, the guy who founded the Acme Corporation, which provides all sorts of dangerous devices for cartoons.
And also seems to own a lot of land.
That's right.
In the
He
LA
owns
area.
all of Toontown.
He owns Toontown.
Yeah, he is their Lord Regent.
But at the same time, he has a positive relationship with these tunes. And what I love about the performance for Marvin Acme is that he has one of the most cartoonish performances.
Yeah, he's played by Stubby K, who played nicely in Guys and Dolls on Broadway and in the movie with Brando.
Sit on, you're rocking the boat.
And he's got like the used car salesman jacket, like a big fat tie. And he's Joy Buzzer's Eddie.
He's got the cologne that he like sprays all over, the old fashioned cologne thing. It's really lovely, and it's like initially that's what the performance is for. It's Jessica Rabbit coming out and perforing for Acme.
The singing voice who is Amy Irving.
It's Amy Irving, uncredited.
My queen.
Both Jessica Rabbits
really
are uncredited.
Yeah, spoken
in this
voice
film.
Kathleen Turner.
She's uncredited.
Just and also just amazing performances. But over
Kathleen
the course
Turner turns in an actual like cartoon voice.
Yes.
You know, she's not just there. It's again like. Every animated movie now is just a handful of celebrities talking against themselves.
Chris Pratt.
You don't like listening to Chris Pratt?
It's
a ghost of a whispered Italian accent.
Hey, it's me, Mario.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Mario from Brooklyn.
But like Kathleen Turner is doing old-timey cartoon voice acting.
Yes.
She understands the assignment.
Yeah, and this was also, this was pre-Aladdin, right? And I feel like from Aladdin on, it was more about capitalizing on the celebrity like voice acting talent.
I suppose, but even then, like, I feel like a lot of the Disney Renaissance movies still have very distinctive voices
we
going
made
into them.
it to like the late 2000s before.
I feel like it was more DreamWorks.
DreamWorks,
right?
DreamWorks.
Home on the Range was really kind of the turning point.
Toy Story also bad for this.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Although,
CGI,
Tom Hanks and Tim Allen are also both doing cartoon voices in Toy Story.
They are, but it was also like getting names became the thing. And at first they were doing voices, and now it's just like
now every cartoon has Tim Allen.
Well, I mean, Hanks is coming back for Toy Story 5, and I'm like, that's not the whole point of 4 was that he's gone. So what was Toy Story 4
is that he's gone.
We can't talk about Toy Story right now. We have to focus on Roger Rabbit.
That's true. That is true. A thing that notoriously has no sequels.
Jessica's appearance on this stage is so cool. They have a sequin dress.
Oh my God.
They had no idea if they could do it or not, and they're like, let's fucking
The
try it.
motherfuckers pulled it off.
It's
Dickie, you
actually
psycho.
sparkly.
They keyed in this sparkly situation over her animatic, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in any animation. It was I felt so gay watching this because I was like, sure, she's got boobs or whatever, but that dress, honey.
Also, it is funny that she goes up to Bob Hoskins and her boob is the exact size and shape of Bob Hoskins' head.
Well, it's funny because she's
got 2 Hoskins under there.
She's so exaggerated, right? She's like, it's like, is this even sexy? Like, it goes a step further.
Right. Like the way she looks from the side is preposterous.
Right. Yeah. Like she just doesn't have a waist at all.
Looks
she
like
has
a
like this
Valentine
really
heart, like
odd hairline.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because like I think that's when they say, oh, we didn't know if we could get away with it. It wasn't just like, can we get away with making her sexy? It's like, can we get away with going beyond sexy into whatever this is?
Into a more cartoonish.
Yeah, because it's not like Don Bluth sexy. Where it's like, okay, yeah, you got the big cans, the
Not
big hips,
sexy
and
the way
everything.
Don Bluth looked.
Yeah, it's like it's like a parody of it.
So, Maddie, you had mentioned, having various awakenings as a result of watching things as a child. Was Jessica Rabbit that for you or not?
No, I was more just like I was fascinated by the way she moved more than anything.
Yeah.
But she's not like, I don't think she's like hot.
Right.
I'm not like attracted to Jessica Rabbit.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I think that's on purpose, right? Because I think the idea is that like because what is the space in the world for her performance?
Yeah.
If anything but just like exists to like drive men insane.
Yeah.
So she's there as just sort of like an avatar of like quote unquote sexiness more than she is like to me hot.
Yeah. It's sort of like Betty Boop because it's like Betty Boop was supposed to be the sexiest fucking shit on screen
I'm
ever.
also not a cartoon fucker. Like
Sure.
I don't find most drawings hot.
Right.
Okay.
Because they're drawings.
I feel like that's unusual for people in the comics and animation field. I feel like there's a lot of absolute like, okay, and now I'm gonna need to make the honk off version of this just for myself.
I'm not horny for the Robin Hood Fox or whatever. Like I just none of this stuff.
Canada's own Brian Bedford, star of the Stratford Festival and Grand Prix.
Yeah, when everyone talks about when everyone talks about the Robin Hood Fox, they're obviously talking about the voice actor.
Yeah. Exactly.
I could hardly handle his importance of being earnest because I'm so busy jacking off.
I've always found the fingers on the foxes in Robin Hood to ruin it for me. It's like I'm doing good, and then I see the fingers, and I'm out.
Brian just holds up a note card in front of the screen.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
To block the fingers. Putting a note into the screen. Like,
no, thank you. I've written this Brian Bedford.
Call again tomorrow.
Call again tomorrow. Thank you.
But yes, Jessica Rabbit here is the avatar of sexiness in the Toon world.
Yeah.
And the thing that is so titillating about her, of course,
because she's got big cans.
That's right, is that she also has some appeal to humans. And one of these humans is Mr. Acme himself.
Yeah.
And after the show, Jessica goes backstage and Marvin shows up at her dressing room, and wouldn't you know it, they start playing patty cake.
Take comfort, son. You're not the first man whose wife played patty cake on him.
This is...
They're just literally playing patty cake.
There's this phenomenal gag where Roger has the photographs and, flips between them fast enough that it becomes an animation of Jessica and Acme playing patty cake.
I kind of love that the photographs and the newspaper photos and stuff, right, that's an earlier phase in production, so her model is like slightly different.
Yeah.
I don't know why that appeals to me so much. I just like the fact that I'm like, I can see the process here.
So my question for the room is like, is this how tunes are born?
No,
if you move pictures fast enough, do they arise from the page?
They're brought from the stork. Okay. Look out for Mr. Stork.
Oh, that's right. Of course, that is actually. So is there a Boss Baby situation?
I'm talking about old classic cartoons, AJ.
Right. They do come from the stork.
From Walter Elias Disney and or Ub Iwerks.
Iwerks.
Yeah, and so
the real man behind the scenes.
The Ub heads.
Rise
Ub.
Grab your notions.
Don't have to tell me twice.
But Roger does not take this news obviously well, and they're like, you know what you need, Roger? Booze, which is fairly common for the old cartoons. Like there were a bunch of alcohol gags. They would take it and then steam come out their ears, or they would just get like really blotto and like move all around the screen. Yeah, but it's not as common in like more recent animation.
Well, and that's because old animation is for adults. Right. It was something that you saw before a movie. It fit like Hays standards, but it was not for children.
And neither is this movie.
Yeah, there's a
and I wanted to make that point real quick because when you see a lot of the stuff about this movie, it's like, I can't believe they put this in a kids movie. This isn't a kids movie.
It's a PG, which in the 80s was like you could see nudity in a PG movie.
Yeah,
you could see
like Looney Tunes were for adults. They did not expect children to know who Peter Lorre was. He's always fucking in there.
And yet I did.
Brian was born knowing Peter Lorre.
But like, it's all of this stuff up until this point is like, if you watch this movie as a kid, you're going to have a sense of what's going on. But I watched this movie when I was a kid. Yeah. It was not nearly as funny for me back then as it is now. It's just, it works on a different level once you're a little older.
Like some of the cartoon gags are funny when you're a kid. Like the opening sequence is really funny. The weasels are funny. But like, that's kind of it for children. Right. Yeah.
And then the rest of it is like, this man's divorce is impending and like there's been murder and intrigue.
Because I saw it when I was a kid and didn't watch it again for like 20 years. And watching it again a couple of years ago, I was like, I don't remember Eddie being a drunk. But I'm like, but when I was 11, I didn't really know I didn't really have a great handle on what a drunk was.
He's just drinking a lot of iced tea.
Why is this guy tired all the time?
Along with all of the photos from the patty cake.
Yeah.
Eddie develops a number of other photos because remember, the camera had some stuff from that trip.
Yeah.
And he sees not just photos of him and Dolores, but also him and another guy. Who's this other guy?
Yeah. Well, and to be frank, no roll of film in this format would have had this many pictures on it.
Okay, Brian.
Also,
just ding.
to make a flip book?
Yeah. That's absurd.
Ding,
These
ding.
are gigantic negatives we're talking about. They were called postcard negatives because they were the size of a postcard.
I also just
Bigger than IMAX film. That's crazy.
Yes, it is.
It's truly actually bigger than IMAX film.
Oh yeah, I love that. Like the way that this sets up the mystery here too. It gives you one line where Roger threatens Eddie in a way like, "Hey, nobody gonna touch my wife." In a way that it's just it's actually scary, and it sets him up. Oh, maybe he did do it in this initial thing.
Yeah,
and like your senses go up for that. But it's done a really great job of like introducing you to like potential villains over the course of it until it does kind of hit you in the face with who the villain is.
But this is a murder mystery, right?
Yeah.
Because we discover right after this sequence where we get a little bit more of Eddie's backstory, where we discover that he and his brother were detectives together and they grew up as clowns, the son of a clown. This is what sort of also gives you a little bit more of an understanding for what Eddie's deal is and why he has empathy for Toons.
Yeah.
Being a clown, of course, you're going to be adjacent to that world.
And they used to work Toontown.
Right.
Yeah, he
that
used
was
to
his
do the
beat.
vaudeville circuit with Betty Boop.
And it's like, as once he does go to Toontown, a lot of Toons recognize him, right? Because of all of his time that he spent there.
Yeah.
He just hasn't been back ever since his brother's untimely demise.
Right.
And the way this is all done without dialogue.
Yes.
Right?
It's all just the pictures.
He
Classic
passes out.
Zemeckis panning around a bunch of photos.
Oh, but it's so effective.
it works.
It's so efficient.
Economy of storytelling, I'm telling you.
Also, his brother's desk is right across from him. It's covered in dust. Like it feels like you're in a Disneyland ride. And actually, that was my experience with Roger Rabbit. Was I rode that ride
Cabs.
all the time when I was
also
a kid.
the dust when Roger. I'm jumping ahead for a second, but when Roger comes in, he puts his hand on the chair. The dust moves.
Unbelievable.
Which is like he puts his hand down, he takes it away. It's the same shot, and the dust is gone.
And there are fingerprints on the chair. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like,
Honestly,
Wizardry.
how dare they?
They should be in jail.
Yeah.
So now we know Eddie's background, and naturally now we have to have the call to adventure. It's the next morning, and shocker, Marvin Acme, remember him? The guy who was playing patty cake with Jessica Rabbit? Well, he's dead. And it looks like Roger Rabbit killed him. My God.
Who framed him?
Who indeed?
Let's find out after this, Eddie.
Hello, worst of all possible worlds listeners! Roger Rabbit here. You might remember me from the Baby Herman shorts. Seminal funnies such as Cookie Trouble, Bassinet Bonanza, and Baby Herman Fights the Hun. Death to the Kaiser, I say! Now, over the years, many people have asked me, Roger, you and Jessica seem to have it all figured out. You've got money. You've got success. You both seem so darn happy. How do you do it? Well, listeners, the secret to any great marriage is threefold. 1, always listen before you speak. 2, never leave a dirty mallet in the sink. And 3, eat pussy like it's your literal job. Yes, I've never felt closer to my darling wife Jessica than when I am molars deep in her giggle box, waiting for the telltale sign of a Toon climax, a seltzer stream right to the face. You've heard of begin the begin. Well, now you can vagin the vagine. Sniff for truffles. Trim the old meat curtains. Dig for carrots in old McGregor's carrot patch. A piano to the head ain't the only way to make your partner see stars. I've devoured Jessica's pussy in all its forms, from Elmer Fudd to Gossamer. And let me tell you, it has done wonders for listeners, may I be frank with you? Hello, I'm Frank. Now that I'm done being frank, can I be honest? Things have been a bit strained between me and Jessica lately. And it's not just the murders, or being framed for the murders, or the extramarital patty cake. The truth is, I've been a little distant lately. I've always been terrible about bringing my work home with me, turning over every take in my head, thinking what I could have done better, beating myself up with every emotional and physical mallet I got because, well, at the end of the day, I'm a C-list toon trying to make a name for himself in this A-list town. Jessica came home from work the other night and found me watching old reels of the art of skiing, what I consider to be Goofy's magnum opus, and she asked me what's wrong, and I said, look at what he can do. He flies off that jump and through the air like he's a bird, like it's a ballet. And I can't even get stars to appear over my head on command. I'm a hack. A nothing, a nobody. And I'm just worried there's gonna come a day when you realize that and leave me for someone who isn't. That's when I feel a hand on my shoulder. Look at me, she says. I do, but my pupils slowly shift to the other side of my head, accompanied by a slide whistle. No bits, Roger, please. My pupils return, but with a slightly smaller slide whistle. Now I want you to listen to me very carefully. Goofy is very good at what he does, and he deserves all the praise he gets. But I don't let you hit because you're Goofy. I let you hit because you're Roger. I married you, honey bunny, because you make me laugh. She pulls me to her ample, sloshing bosom as she uses my ears to dry my own tears. Thanks, Jessica. You're welcome, Roger. Now, make like you did in World War I and get the French in my trenchin'. So grab your partner today and goose a spruce poos till all your problems go vamoose. Eating pussy. Suck her and suck that gash.
So we're back.
Maddie has cracked a third can of the Beetlejuice
soda pop.
I can't stop drinking it.
I do worry that by the end of this podcast, you will be dead and we will be liable.
Just looking at this, one can of this thing contains 42 grams of added sugars, which is 84% of your recommended daily value.
That can't be true.
That's what it says. That's what it says on the can. Now that we've got our call to adventure, we're about to meet our primary villain. Because Eddie goes with the cops to investigate the crime scene.
That's right, the ghost with the most. Beetlejuice himself.
I feel like if I had to film this, I would quit the movie industry entirely.
Yeah, so this is what I remember the most about this movie from having seen it as a kid. Just as we're sort of looking around and seeing what's in this warehouse, Christopher Lloyd shows up. He is playing Judge Doom.
He's got weird teeth.
He's got a horrible makeup line.
But I love the fucking, it's just a safe stuck in the floor.
Yeah.
Like in such a cartoony way.
Yeah.
And the chalk outline of someone's body where the head is just where the safe was.
Yes.
It's such a funny gag to me.
It's so grotesque, too, because your mind fills in the blank of what happened before he got there.
He killed somebody.
Yeah.
But all of these visual gags here, because, you know, it's boxes full of cartoon mayhem creation, right? Like things that will cause mayhem in various ways, because that's what Acme does.
And a lot of fake eyes.
I want to talk a little bit about Judge Doom because there were two aspects of his character that were cut because they would be logistical nightmares.
Okay.
One, he was supposed to have a fake vulture friend who would perch on his shoulder and be in every single scene that he's in. And two, he was supposed to, in his briefcase, have 12 kangaroos that would spell out, "You are guilty" with their joeys. In order to get his like guilty verdict,
That
in
would
order
have
to
been
kill people,
such a
kangaroo court.
good
a literal kangaroo court.
gag. I'm sad they had to cut that, but
And 76 trombones.
Why?
Oh, to lead the big parade.
That was a joke.
Oh, well, I didn't know. It's good to let people know,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
unfortunately, we didn't get the kangaroos.
We did not get the kangaroos.
But what we did get was
Kangarooless.
this fantastic fucking performance from Christopher Lloyd.
We talked to Mr. Maroon. He told us the rabbit became quite agitated when you showed him the pictures. The rabbit said one way or another, he and his wife are going to be happy. Is that true?
Pal, Do I look like a stenographer?
Shut your yap, Eddie. The man's in charge.
That's all right, Lieutenant. From the smell of him, I'd say it was the booze talking. No matter, the rabbit won't get far. My men will find him.
Weasels.
Yes, I find I have a special gift for the work.
All right, you mugs, fall out.
Did you find the rabbit?
Don't worry, Judge. We got the informants all over the city. We'll find them.
Christopher Lloyd kills a shoe. There's a box that's just full of imprisoned sentient shoes.
That was the real, probably the thing that stuck in my, I think this is very common memory of having this horrid scene where the shoe, voiced by The Simpsons' own Nancy Cartwright,
that's right, indeed,
is murdered horribly.
This shoe is so cute.
The shoe is adorable.
It's the cutest. Yeah. It's not just one. It's not just the cutest shoe I've ever seen. It's one of the cutest animations I've seen. Yeah. Period.
So cartoons, of course, can't die. They can get hit. They can get squashed.
Yeah.
They can go through sissy hypno and still come out fine.
Right.
And so the judge has made the dip to kill cartoons. It is a mixture of turpentine, acetate, and benzene.
A funny little gag if you've ever had to take paint off of anything. Very rarely when you're taking paint off of an animation cell does it smoke like that.
Yeah.
Or scream for its life.
Yeah. Or look.
Well, that's not too uncommon.
Or look pleadingly toward you as it is screaming with it for its life. You know, it's.
And the shoe is red, so like the fluid becomes red as it starts to dissolve in it.
He takes like the rubber. He takes his hand out. He's got a rubber glove on. It's like covered in like basically blood.
And again, it's like this is one of those moments where it's like, oh, this is not a children's movie. It like, again, you can watch as a kid. I did. I was scarred by this.
You'll
moment.
remember the shoe forever.
Of course.
You will always rest in peace, you beautiful shoe. The shoe doesn't even come back at the end. Like there's no redemptive arc for the shoes.
Yeah. This is something that I learned. This is a rule of Roger Rabbit canon.
Okay.
Is that it is possible to reanimate characters so long as you have at least one of the cells. So in my own personal headcanon, there was a cell available of this shoe somewhere, and it was able to be reanimated.
Because you got to think about the shoe's brother, or like, I don't know.
Companion.
Yeah, companion, you know, because this was a right shoe, so what about Lefty out there?
Lefty's still in the box. Like, that's the thing. Like, most of these shoes are just sitting in a box for the rest of their lives. Like veal.
Oh, God.
It's a lot like veal.
It's also such a wonderful...
Just as tasty.
Do you think anyone's eaten a cartoon in universe?
Oh, man. I mean, have people hunted cartoon for sport?
Does anybody...
well, so actually, one of the things about Judge Doom was that, I'm not joking, one of the draft, there were like 60 drafts of the script. It's like Back to the Future, right? It went through so many permutations, but Judge Doom at one point was the guy who killed Bambi's mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
he was the hunter?
He was the hunter,
But Disney probably wasn't happy with that, I imagine.
I actually think it just wasn't dramaturgically sound enough to keep in.
Sure.
And plus,
that's the sort of thing that would have made the movie into Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Honestly. Right?
That's a good point. Like,
we should Bambi would be a movie in the world of Roger Rabbit played by actors.
That's right.
Yeah,
we should take a moment then also to establish what Judge Doom's whole deal is as a character, right?
Right.
Yeah.
He is keeper of the law, specifically regarding tunes. And as we saw with this shoe, he can just kill them at will. He's been given, the power of life and death by the governing authority because, again, in this world, tunes are second-class citizens who can be dispatched at will.
Yeah, they're not recognized as having the same rights as you or I.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a wonderful bit of foreshadowing in that that he has to put on a glove first in order to use the dip. And immediately your brain goes, but if he's human, the dip shouldn't affect him.
Well, he's also already wearing gloves.
And he's also
It's so funny.
Oh my God, that's right.
He puts a glove on over his glove,
Yeah.
But maybe
he has no skin exposed except for his head.
Yeah.
But also maybe it's that the dip does have other toxic properties. You wouldn't
You got turpentine on your skin, kind of dries you out.
You wouldn't want to dunk your hand into a thing of turpentine. That just wouldn't be a good idea.
Not too frequently, no.
Right, but again,
every once in a while for recreation.
Just for fun.
I tend to drink it. I'm telling you, I only
as
drink
they reach for the Fanta.
Haunted apple. I'm just gonna drink it right on my colon.
There it is.
All right. ASMR
refreshing.
I love hearing that when I'm editing.
Cinnamon lingers. But yeah,
Do I detect clove?
We got callbacks, folks.
We should do.
We got
right here
Betty.
in River City with a capital C, and that rhymes for P, and that stands for I'm gonna go fucking kill myself.
The weasels are. I want to talk a little bit about the weasels here for a second because they're originally supposed to be 7 of them to mimic the 7 dwarves.
There's a lot of weasels.
I think there's 5. I believe there's 5 weasels.
5 weasels for 5 daughters.
Going down to Sodom.
Log rolling.
God damn it, you people.
Stubby K, by the way, he wasn't. I don't think he was in Seven Brides, but he was in the Little Abner musical.
Oh, wow. I love these weasels because they're just little stinkers.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, really interesting that like Roger's whole point on being on this planet is to make people laugh. And because these weasels have fully turned against their core identity, when they laugh, they could die from laughter.
Yeah.
Because they have so profoundly rejected who they are as people. And they're just nightmares to behold, some of these weasels.
Yeah. I love the Zoot Suit Weasel. I think the design on the Zoot Suit Weasel is so cool.
So cool.
I love him. He's the main weasel, I think. He's the boss
he's
of
the one who
weasels.
holds the pistol.
Yeah.
I think
waves around.
I think one of the weasels is named Smartass.
Yeah.
Like it's
that
really
might be the dumb one.
Yeah, and then and there's like Psycho Weasel.
The
I think
pistol's
is
one of
them.
those great examples of like, oh, the animators just had to deal with that.
Yeah, like the pistol's
'Cause it
just like
is
waving around the
flying
string.
around the room.
Yeah, he's walking around the room just going, I'm pointing this at everything.
So having now witnessed this absolutely horrifying execution, Eddie has a better understanding of what the stakes are of this thing. Like, if Roger Rabbit gets found by this guy, he's going to suffer a horrifying demise. And something that's a little unusual here, of course, is that the nature of the murder was a safe to the head. And we'll also remember that Eddie's brother died thanks to a piano to the head. So something here is already not quite adding up. And Eddie heads back to his office, and he is immediately confronted by Baby Herman. Baby Herman just doesn't believe fundamentally that Roger did it. In fact, he believes that somebody else did it because here's...
So he was framed.
Well, one might say
who
that.
would have done that?
Who indeed? Because here's the thing, right? Marvin Acme had a will. And in that will, the rumor has it that the entirety of Toontown is to be willed to its inhabitants on Acme's death.
The Toons say he promised.
They do. They
and
said
and they
this.
love and believe him.
It's sort of like how the Staten Islanders believe that, like, they were granted a lifetime pass to never have to pay tolls on the Verrazano Bridge.
That's right.
Which isn't true.
It's like how John F. Kennedy said that I'm going to fake my death and then come back, and then all of you are going to get med beds that cure all diseases.
Right. It's a lot like that. Yeah.
It's going to happen, like in like 3 months.
Yeah.
That's pretty soon.
Yeah,
It's pretty soon.
He's just waiting for Donald Trump to get
so
reelected.
if you're listening with an illness that's killing you, hang on.
We're almost there.
3 months. We're so
Stay
close.
in line.
For your med bed.
When Marvin Acme died, his will was in his pocket.
Right.
But that will now nowhere to be found. It wasn't at the crime scene. So what's going on?
Yeah.
And without a will, there's no way.
It's also that I think this scene is very funny because obviously Eddie Valiant has to like take a big swig of booze when he gets back into the room. But then it is the empty glass that allows him to see that the will was in his pocket, which means alcohol actually does solve a lot of this movie's problems.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Not only has Eddie heard this little bit from Baby Herman, it turns out that there's somebody in his apartment, and it's fucking Roger Rabbit himself.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
He's underneath, he's in his bed, actually. He lies down in his
Murphy bed.
In his little Murphy bed, rolls over, and there's Roger.
Great
being
little
like,
guy.
Hello! Yeah, and immediately things go to shit, right? It's like, get out of here.
So I didn't clip a whole lot of Roger, but I did want to clip at least a little so you can really hear this performance. They end up going back to the bar that's owned by Dolores so that they can hide out. And right here, Eddie is trying to basically hacksaw away a handcuff that is linking him to Roger.
Hold still, will ya?
Does this help?
Yeah, thanks. Do you mean to tell me that you could have taken your hand out of that cuff at any time?
No, not at any time. Only when it was funny. Come on, Eddie, where's your sense of humor?
He always is funny, or only on days when he's wanted for murder?
Listen, my philosophy is this. If you don't have a good sense of humor, you're better off dead.
So this is the other thing that I really like about sort of the way they build the world here. Roger also has his own very clear set of motivations. He just wants to make people laugh. And in fact, it's such a strong will that if anything happens that might prompt it from him, even if he doesn't want to, he still has to make people laugh.
It's a compulsion.
Yes.
Listening to that clip also, it was very interesting to me because I think the sound design of this movie is so good. A thing I wasn't thinking about so much because it's so rich visually, but listening to it there, like incredible cartoon Foley work on the saw. And like somebody whips something around, you hear like a whipping noise. Like all those cartoon noises are in there, just like in the world. It's so good.
And the dialogue editing, you'll see that there's a lot of ADR in this movie. There's a lot of dialogue replacement, partly because they had to have the live actors on set, or the voice actors live on set. Right. So Fleischer playing Roger Rabbit, you know, he would do he would sort of act as Roger's stand-in. He'd walk around in the costume, and then they'd do another rehearsal where they just had a life-size Roger Rabbit dummy, so they knew where their eye line would be. Then they had to take him out, put in the little animatronics or marionettes or whatever for that shot, and then Fleischer would just be over in the corner in a booth reading his lines off. It's a very complicated process for all the actors involved, including the cartoon voice actors. Everybody has to be 100% all day long every day.
It's wild that all that was going on and everybody gave such good performances. Right? Like it's so easy to get Ewan McGregor in the second Star Wars prequel where he's like in the big ball of tennis. He's in the big pit of tennis balls the whole movie. Like he's just like in like a CGI void. And he's just like not looking at anybody. Not like there's like nothing for him to react off of. But like there's just like so much going on here. And the days were probably so tortured and shitty.
Well, Hoskins was shooting for 16-hour days for most of this shoot.
And then turning in that before, it's crazy. Like,
unbelievable.
This scene was him, you know, he had Roger stuffed in the coat, and they had all these springs and things hooked up to him. He had wires running down his pants, so he was wired into this whole thing.
My God.
Couldn't go to the bathroom. It was all poking him. It was not fun. Like, that's the thing I noted with everyone who worked on it, was like they were all very proud of it, and they never want to do another one of these fucking things again.
Yeah, of course
I had that same thought of like, everybody is 100% committed, but this is not a movie where you're like, wow, everybody's having such a good time. This is to pull off.
Maybe Christopher Lloyd.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he's having fun. But to pull off something this technical requires a razor sharp amount of precision, like because it's layer on layer on layer on layer, and you can't just be goofing around. This isn't fucking Blues Brothers.
And
you know,
the thing that you do with special effects shots at this time. Now we have a lot of digital tracking and things like that. But like if you're doing everything is optical, you're not really running things through the computer. And even if you're running just certain steps through the computer, you basically, if you're doing a moving shot, you have to have a bunch of little robot arms that record the movement. So let's say you're moving the camera across, and then you have this element over here that's going to get replaced by a special effect, and that has to move up as you're going across. You do this shot once with the actors, and then you record all of that movement.
Right.
And so here they have the added animatronics for anything holding a glass or a tray or whatever. Then you go back. As an actor, you have to hit your marks at the same time because that camera is going to move at the exact same speed, hit the exact same points as it did last take.
Right.
This is so technical.
It's really funny too because they even sneak in like so many cool, like the animators are able to sneak in like little bits here or there too. In this scene where it keeps cutting back, it's a two shot of it cuts back between Eddie and Roger and Dolores in the other corner, and it just keeps cutting back and forth. And every time it cuts back, Roger is in a weirder position than we left him. And it's so funny. And again, they could have just done this. I feel like most modern animation or most modern things that would do this, it would be in the same position every single time. But like
that also could be, I mean, like what I know of animators, it is almost never animators not wanting to do something or not being able to. Almost every animator working today could do this stuff.
They just aren't allowed to.
They're not allowed to. They're not given the budget to do so. So Roger would keep being in the same position because it's extra money, it's extra time. Like the producers won't allow it, the network, the whatever, the studio won't allow it. Like so much the way that you get quality animation is pump money into it. There's already so many people who are so good at it and so passionate about it that are sitting around wanting to do this stuff and are not allowed to.
And it's such an interesting contrast to me too, like talking about the highly technical physical side of the production, which was it had to be restricted so that the animators had the freedom to play around. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. It is a small movie in that the number of locations we go to is actually pretty limited, right? It's maybe like
a handful of sets, like a handful of locations. Yeah.
And here and there, it's just that what they're able to do inside of those locations is so extraordinary, I think, because they limited the scope of it.
Well, and one of the really extraordinary things they're able to do is in the very next scene where Eddie goes back to his home and Jessica Rabbit is there waiting for him.
You gotta have the rabbit to make the scam work.
No, I love my husband. You've got me all wrong. You don't know how hard it is being a woman looking the way I do.
Yeah, well, you don't know how hard it is being a man looking at a woman looking the way you do.
Perfect.
My notions.
My notions.
The way that they get her to physically interact with him, like there's the part where she takes his hat and slams it into his chest, or she grabs his necktie and pulls on it all the way to the end. I mean, just
when she
I'm mad at them.
I know, right?
How dare they?
Holding up when she holds up the mirror and like goes from her face to seeing his face in the mirror.
Fuck off!
How did they do that?
Yeah.
They turned a mirror very slowly with a string. It's crazy.
That scene with Roger where they're hacksawing the handcuffs. Eddie walks in, it's a dark room, and he hits his head on the light and then turns the light on, and the light is swinging, and then he hits his head on the light again, and hits his head on the light again. So they have to go to multiple different shots. The editor has to fucking clean that up, where the swing matches up every time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the animators who are doing the highlights and shadows on every cell have to make that work with each swing of the light until it is finally held and stopped. It is unbelievable.
And to tease that out even further, cutting physical film. I mean, it goes without saying now, obviously, because
optical printing, multiple layers.
While Robert Zemeckis is 5 feet away from you, jerking off.
That's right.
To his own movie.
Well, and you can
Bobby,
see,
get out of here.
You can see why
get rid of my notions.
You can see why he gets so confident in doing, like, that's why Back to the Future 2, it's all split screen shit. He's like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Of course I could just do like Parent Trap shit after this.
Well, it's all just about the little details too. I mean, the splashing of water, like the weasels kind of do on their way out, you know, which is just at the tail end of a very complicated scene. They added that tiny little wrinkle. The shadow work on every single one of Roger's movements, where if he moves an ear, the shadow also moves.
Yes. And this is where it was really smart, because the shadows were their own team of people.
Oh, okay.
So like that's a layer that you're doing as a mat over the animation. So that involved another roll of film.
Unbelievable.
Another element in the optical. There was like almost too many things in the optical printer. And so they were having to come up with new technology. They also had to figure out how to make something that was superimposed, change focus, right? They do a shot where Jessica Rabbit looks up at a window in the background and it racks the focus away from her to the building, so they have to make her blurry.
Right.
There's such weird sound design in that Jessica Rabbit scene too, because Bob Hoskins' pants drop and then Dolores walks in and he stands up really quickly and hits Jessica Rabbit's boobs.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But they sound wet. Like there's something in them, and it was so unnerving.
That is what they sound like.
That is all.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say that for you, just as someone of boob experience. They do sort of, they're very wet,
especially when they're that big.
Yeah.
That's why they're so wet. Is they're
the bigger
full.
they are, the wetter
they're fuller. Yeah.
That's, you guys know the saying.
The bigger they are, the wetter they are.
Yeah. I'm always saying this.
Yeah.
God, I wish.
I also just want to point out here.
I don't like the way.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't feel good about it. But there is something that's actually genuinely very sweet about Jessica and Roger's relationship, which is why I think it works in the movie. When Roger is depressed after he thinks that Jessica's, he has seen that Jessica has played patty cake behind his back. He has a triptych of photos with her where they're all just on like vacation or things, and he's not really, he never ogles her. It's every single shot where they're like hugging, he has his ears wrapped around her head, and it's just so cute.
She lets him hit because he's goofy.
I mean, it is. She has that line where she says, you know, I'm with him because he makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And it's so
It's sincere.
genuine and sincere. From here, we get some plot. You know, it's opportunities
all
to...
the machinery, all the double crosses.
Every noir's like end of the second act is always like, I kind of like always lose track of like the details.
It's honestly better if you don't know what happened.
Exactly.
Like if you walked out of it, you're like, there was a bunch of stuff that went down at that point. I don't know.
So we get another fun scene with Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
We get a really great car chase scene.
Yeah.
That car.
Benny the
have you
cab.
seen the behind the scenes of that
No.
car? That is a fucking real like go-kart. And where the trunk of that car is where they have the driver.
Fantastic.
Like below Bob Hoskins driving this thing.
Fantastic.
So they're getting into actually like hazardous situations.
He's
in
Fred
that fucking
Flintstone.
thing.
He's just moving his feet
That's
really,
right.
really
But
fast.
that's why it
Since
feels...
the divorce, he had to find different work. Yeah.
That's why it feels so good and so real.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned...
Because they're actually moving around.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mentioned...
They could actually die at any
I
moment.
mentioned Blues Brothers earlier. That's another really great example of like the reason that those car chase sequences feel so good is that they are real cars.
Yep.
They smashed like 50 cars making that movie,
Yeah.
you know? And it's the same thing here.
Turns out the John Landis way of directing makes good movies.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
And nobody dies. Bad metaphor.
Yeah, bad. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Oh, God.
I mean, he's not as good as Max Landis, but
Oh, my God.
we also get...
he's my close personal friend.
No! Don't let him sleep on your couch.
We also get a really fun character grounding scene here. We
You can do it again.
Are you done, children?
I was just pointing at the couch.
So,
I was silent.
pretty good, Riley.
I will say this is that Trash Future episode that you went on where like Riley threw out the outline halfway through. One of my favorite episodes of maybe any podcast ever.
I should not be invited anywhere.
It's really good.
I only know how to do one thing.
Okay, so we also get a really fun scene where Roger and Eddie are at a theater together. This is also another really nice moment of character for Roger because they're watching a Goofy animated cartoon, and Roger's like, Goofy, the best to ever do it.
He's the best to ever do it.
I love this scene so much.
Yeah.
It made me so happy to be like, of course he's got a tremendous amount of respect for whatever Goofy's real name is. I always forget.
Isn't it just Goofy?
No, he's got a real name. Talk about something else. I'm going to find it.
Sure.
Well, no, it's so beautiful, this scene, because it's like Roger as sort of the archetypal ideal, I think, of what a movie star should be, which is just in love with the craft and in love with those who make it with
His
him.
real name is George G. Geef.
That's so funny.
I cannot believe.
Does the G stand for goof? Is it George Goof Geef?
Go, please. It's maybe like that's implied. I like.
Apparently, the Goof Troop the continuity of Goof Troop gave him the name GG Goofy Goof.
He was actually he did a very similar act to Gigi Allen.
That's right. Gosh.
So, Maddie, what is it about this scene between Eddie and Roger that grabs you so much?
It honestly it was less Eddie and Roger, and that it was Roger watching like a modern master at work. And the way that the animators talk about like the craft of this thing, it's the same kind of like, oh, I just love when people take this shit seriously. It deserves and requires care.
Yeah.
And to like watch, of course you're watching if you're an animated character and you're watching Goofy, you're like, this guy's the best to ever fucking do it.
And it's very meta in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not in an annoying way.
No.
But it's like, of course,
it's not just dropping the references and being like, yeah, remember that.
It feels like when you see comedians in the back of a comedy club talking to each other.
Exactly.
It also gives you a sense that maybe Roger's a little second rate. Like this studio is not on the same level as Disney and Warner Brothers.
But like all artists, he's doing it because he himself has tremendous taste, regardless of his own skill level.
Yeah. And there's something too about the lighting in this space where Roger is a little dark for a lot of the movie, especially in the 4K restoration, but in the theater they are of equal lighting, and this was the scene where I was like, Roger Rabbit is real, he is my friend, and he is in this theater right now, because Bob Hoskins gives this Shakespearean performance about remembering his brother's death, where Roger is just like, I completely understand why you would hate me after that. And it's just like, how could you hate Roger for how high is his voice is and how like Eddie, it's so like up here. Like you're just like, you love this guy and you want to protect him at all costs. And that's where the turn happens.
And Eddie gives that whole monologue with a very slow crane push in that whole time, and they have to fucking animate Roger slowly.
I didn't even think about that.
Getting bigger and getting out of frame.
Yeah.
How dare they?
also, like doing this traditional animation is just so astounding to me. I keep saying astounding and crazy and wacky, but it is so just astonishing.
You run out of words at some point, don't you?
Like, making it get bigger. You know, like you have to draw it smoothly. It's just
they didn't have green screens. They didn't have red X's to go off of.
I know. I think
it's just fucking Williams just being like, oh yeah.
I think about trying to do this.
Yeah.
And my brain is like shorting out. I'm like, I don't even like drawing cars. Like,
Maddie, have you done much in the way of animation? Or?
The nib, the RIP.
Right.
We had a brief. It was 2 seasons of animated shows that we did with Ogden Blick Studios back when we were owned by First Look Media. And I was a producer on that show, and I wrote a bunch of segments, and then we used to animate. I would draw keyframes, and the animators at Ogden Blick would animate it. And I would occasionally go to the studio and like observe them doing it. But I was like a producer on the show, and I sat in all the voice stuff, which was very fun and cool to do. But like I just got a new appreciation for animation works, and I got my hands around it a little better. And I've done here and around that time, I was like a full-time employee of a media company, and they gave me I like had the time to like play around with some stuff, and I was doing some like GIF animations back because it was 2017 and we all had to do that.
It was the style of the time, yes.
It was the style of the time.
Pivot to GIF.
Pivot to GIFs. I mean, kind of, but I did some comics that had like motion in them and stuff, and I got like, I know how to do it very amateurishly, much like Roger Rabbit watching Goofy. I'm watching this movie I could never even fathom being this good at it.
And, as somebody who I think, particularly in Boys Weekend, like really has just an impeccable sense of like world building and detail work. I think some like the signs in the background are just. I think that's. I feel like that's a Simpsons influence there.
Yeah, that was Simpsons. I was thinking a lot about Futurama actually.
Yes. Oh, cool. Yeah,
which is like because like the Simpsons has a lot of background gags, which is obviously like baked into my brain. But like Futurama does like background world building.
They love the signage, the weird little things that you notice. Yeah.
Right. And like all visual media that takes place in like a built environment that's like not real. Like it's not secondary world or anything, but like something that is completely made up, like the world of Boys Weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously you're going to do world building in the background. That's just how it works. But like to me, it was just sort of like, this is an opportunity for jokes.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And that was also a thing to keep me sort of from going crazy because comics is really tedious. Because you write it, or I pitched it, then I outlined it, and then I wrote a script, and then I penciled it, then I inked it, then I colored it. Right. And it's just
at some
sort
point
of like,
you're just like, okay, I need to get finished with this.
I've read it so many times. By the time I'm like, when I'm inking it, I'm like, well, I'm going to throw something back right here, just so I'm like, to keep this visually interesting for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And I have to imagine that the process of animating Roger Rabbit had some of that same shit going on where they were just having to stare at these cells forever and be like,
I mean, usually when you're animating, right, you have like your sheets of paper in the early stages where you're penciling in and everything. And it's just kind of going off of that. You'll have your storyboards. You'll have maybe some kind of rudimentary background shape or some, maybe. But here they had to print every frame of film from the movie, enlarge it, make it into a background that they had to draw each initial sketch on. So you can't even. Yeah, I just
doing this movie without like Photoshop seems just
insane. Yeah, it's also over 90 minutes, and that's the thing.
It's a long movie.
It is. I mean, it doesn't feel
long.
It never once feels it. But
are there how many scenes are there where there's not a cartoon in it?
Very few.
Very
maybe one
few.
or two.
Yeah. Probably
there's
right
like
up top.
There's the bar.
And Zemeckis, the way that he understands blocking is just. Yeah, I talked about how like that first shot was kind of Spielberg blocking, but like Zemeckis knows how to stage people, how to position them, how to move the camera, and that like he even does a little burlesque on it at the end of Back to the Future 2, where like Doc says a line and he walks right up in the foreground and then he comes back.
Oh
and then Marty walks to the same spot and doesn't know why he did it and then comes back.
I really do. This era of Zemeckis, I really actually do love how stagey everything is.
Yes.
It feels a little artificial, but in a way that's fascinating.
And here you'll have
cool.
with signs being this major part of storytelling. Clover Leaf, how you see Clover Leaf, how you see symbols for the trolleys and everything. There's a part where Valiant and the bartender, they walk halfway across the street simply so that you can see that Cloverleaf billboard behind them while they're talking to each other.
That actually happens in this very next scene here after Roger and Eddie leave the theater. Where we see, right up in front of the bar, because the bar is also the trolley depot.
Right.
We learn that Cloverleaf, the big evil corporation, they're the fucking Wayland Yutani of this movie.
Right.
Crew disposable, bring back the rabbit.
They have acquired the trolley depot. They've also acquired Maroon Studios.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And wouldn't you know it, that is the piece that makes Eddie realize the connection between all of these things. Cloverleaf, that's the big connect.
It's a real estate scheme.
My God.
To build freeways.
And we'll get to that a little bit later, but basically Eddie goes right off to the studio, right? This is going to be what unlocks everything, but just when he's about to learn the truth, Mr. Maroon is assassinated before his very eyes. And it seems perhaps that Jessica Rabbit was the one who pulled the trigger.
And the most Murder on the Orient Express looking gun, poking out of a...
The gun could not be longer.
So funny.
So good.
It's an incredibly visceral scene, but he gives chase to Jessica Rabbit.
Yes.
Because Jessica's also taken Roger with her by conking him out, knocking him over the head with a frying pan.
And wouldn't you know it, they've driven off to Toontown. And so that is where we will go together.
Forget it, Josh. It's Toontown.
That's right. This is where the cartoon pistol comes into play that we were talking about.
Yeah, with all the bullets who are really lovely until they get
the one
racist.
racist
Yeah, well, so the bullets are... Okay, no, this is where we go into voice actor territory. This is my shit, right?
Yeah.
Because the first voice you hear is Jim Cummings doing an Andy Devine impersonation.
Oh,
Because
it's one of
Andy
the people
Devine did
himself.
a million fucking Westerns, and he's Friar Tuck, right? So it's an impression of the guy who played Friar Tuck, but doing an impression of the cowboy characters he played.
Sexy
And then
Friar Tuck.
also...
More like Friar Fuck.
More like Friar Fuck. in a lot of
Also,
ways.
you get Pat Buttram, who was the sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood. He's also Mr. Haney in Green Acres. Did a lot of, he's the guy, now, Mr. Douglas. And
I always love to hear that guy's voice.
oh, it's so
such a
good.
delight.
And it's like, he was still alive. Thank God they got him. And then Jim Gallant as a third bullet. And then there's the racist bullet.
Yeah, well.
It's the one racist gag.
I'm calling the gag in.
Considering that it's 1988, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing that this is the only racist gag in the movie.
Congratulations, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
You were only racist for about 30 to 45 seconds.
But yeah, no, it's like the classic Native American thing.
Yeah, it
He's
does
got
a war
the
whoop
headdress. He's
thing
got the
and-
tomahawk.
Yeah, it's just...
Robert, come on the show. I'll interview you for a Monday interview, and I will grill you about the racist bullet for 40 minutes.
He famously does not talk about past projects. Like he is very much against.
Famously will
the
not
future.
apologize
He
for
will
being
not
racist.
apologize.
So he just has to talk
for
about
fucking
that
his mom.
shitty-looking movie coming up with Tom Hanks,
Where everything is one shot?
Yeah, and everything is AI. Yeah, okay.
Everything
It's
is
not AI.
it's one shot.
It's one shot that doesn't move.
There are
that's
It's the one based
stupid.
on that comic.
That thing looks so
there are
bad.
assets in the background that are
There are
procedurally
AI.
generated.
Fuck,
Yeah,
are there?
yeah. That's my understanding.
that's
at
the
least.
thing.
Blew it, Robert. Bobby, get in here. We just want to talk.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and
I know you're listening to the show, Robert.
That's right.
He's a huge fan.
I think Blank Check talked about this a lot, but it's this idea that Zemeckis really loves playing with his toys.
He needs the hot new thing.
He needs that hot new thing,
He
and
needs
so
that Beowulf juice.
Yeah. Well, that's why Beowulf is like, even though it's not good,
Again.
it's fascinating.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and there are things about it that could be good, and then it's like, well, yeah, Roger Avery wrote half of this, so of course not.
But it's got gold
nobody-
butts in it.
And nobody says what.
The first line of Beowulf.
He what?
There it is. Great. So we head into Toontown.
That is one of our normal drops,
Okay.
Maddie.
That is on the
Looks
board.
like somebody hasn't been listening to Wit's Endless Summer.
And I don't blame you. So So we enter into Toontown, which has this remarkable opening, which I think they just set up anytime anyone comes into Toontown. The curtain parts, and we're in this like nightmare tree world where all these Ents are screaming at Bob Hoskins, welcoming
they're
to
singing.
Yes.
Are those Ents from anything?
I think they are.
I was puzzling over this because they had such a weird specific design where they had like knees going into the ground.
Like Cuphead riffs on that. That feels like a Fleischer.
They seem very Fleischer.
This whole opening feels Fleischer, right? Because Fleischer cartoons often have a lot of like kids go to sleep and then they go to a candy land, or someone is getting introduced to a place.
That one episode of Over the Garden Wall where they're
two-strip Technicolor. And,
like Dr. X.
If you want to hear more about Over the Garden Wall, listen to our episode about it.
From last year.
Wow.
Listen to the rest of this episode because that's what I'll be talking about.
Now it's Over the Garden Wall Part 2, baby.
But that's the thing is, I think, just about all of these cartoon characters are existing cartoon characters from other things, but they're not things that you would necessarily go, oh, that's that tree from
Master Chief.
And even
he's doing this.
Even to the point of recognizable characters, the fact that Bob Hoskins got the gun from Yosemite Sam is a fun little bit of world building that doesn't call too much attention to itself.
No.
Right. The cameo use in this movie, and we're going to get into like the big cameo, like we had Donald and Daffy earlier, but now we're getting into like the Mickey and Bugs, and Tweety and like the big heavy hitters.
Droopy Dog shows up as an elevator operator.
Growing up, sir.
And then, we do get a moment where we have the classic cartoon thing. Bob Hoskins steps out over a ledge and does the delayed fall.
And grabs his hat. And he just has to duck down and then reach his hands up and grab it, and he times it perfectly.
And then we get this.
Me. What's up, Doc?
It's
Jumping
it's
without
them.
a parachute? Kinda dangerous, ain't it?
Yeah, you could get killed.
That's an insane line for Mickey Mouse to say. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but I don't think you want it.
I do. Give it to me. Gee, better let him have it, Bugs.
Okay, Doc. Whatever you say. Here's the spare.
Thank you.
And it's a spare tire.
Aw, poor fella.
Yeah, ain't I a stinker?
Another thing there, speaking of like old designs of characters and the sort of fascinating time and culture where this movie was allowed to get made and exist. Mickey Mouse being a little shithead.
Being a little prankster.
The way that he used to be. He was a little piece of shit imp monster man.
Like Bugs Bunny.
Very similar to Bugs. And then he became the corporate mascot and they stopped making Mickey cartoons for such a long time. But like, they let him be. He says, you could die. You could die. Has Mickey Mouse ever said the word die before?
Like in
German.
Only to me.
In Steamboat Willie, like he fucking pulls on the udders of a pig to make him squeal.
Yeah.
Like,
He's
the udders
a
of a pig?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those were the pig's notions, actually.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we call them udders when it's a pig. I think they're just nipples.
They're just nipples.
It looked like an udder
There's
the
not
way
a-
it was
Sure.
rendered.
Well, they're engorged.
It's not actually a pig. It's a drawing of a pig.
You gotta-
the pictures aren't actually even moving. It's dozens of pictures a second.
Wait, who drew it?
And
Was it a man known as Ub Iwerks?
It was Ub Iwerks.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse was at the core of a whole moral panic. They thought that Mickey Mouse was like
was the Bart
turning
Simpson of his
kids
day.
into juvenile delinquents.
Man.
Which is just, it doesn't seem real
They're
to
going
say
around,
that.
They're
Yeah,
going
not
around
anymore,
attaching udders
certainly.
to pigs and then yanking.
You get away from Wilbur, Jimmy.
So the thing about this Toontown sequence is you really just need to see it for yourself to fully appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. I mean,
And it doesn't overstay its welcome.
No.
It's fast.
Also, like
we're in, we're out.
everything's animated. The buildings are like bouncing around.
Yeah.
Like it's so.
When Bob Hoskins falls, the buildings like watch him fall. Great.
Yeah.
It's so good because it's also so clear that like whoever Williams is like such like a student of the thing of like the art and the craft of it, where it's like it is all very old fashioned animation.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, when would have Toontown been built? It's like at the outset of animation, right? So everything's gonna be very fleishery and bouncy, and everyone's singing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's so well considered and so well rendered that it's just I don't know. I love it. I got nothing to add.
Well, it's also just like it's also kind of run down too in a way that Toontown.
It's a ghetto.
It is a ghetto. It has not been well maintained, and so when he's out on the street and he's being chased by not Jessica Rabbit, when
Sadie Hawkins, basically.
Yeah,
that's another Lil Abner reference for everyone. That's where Sadie Hawkins' dances comes from.
Oh, really?
From that character. Yes.
There's nothing better.
Do you like my sweater? So
I wouldn't have pegged you for somebody who knew Reliant K, AJ.
It had crossover appeal.
That was mainstream. Were you exposed to any Reliant K?
I don't know what
they are.
I know about Reliant K.
Okay, they were a Christian band.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I didn't listen.
Yeah, that's why we did. I was smart not to.
A thing that growing up as like a punk, who went to a lot of punk shows and played in a lot of punk bands.
Yeah.
I developed an incredible nose for sniffing out Christian music and staying away from it.
Hell yeah!
Like I could tell when you like played me a new ska band. I was like, no.
That's Christian ska right there. That's
ska.
Five Iron Frenzy.
5 Iron Frenzy.
I hear Jesus on the tambourine.
This is just for you, Rosie.
That's right. Yeah. We finally bridged the gap. This is great.
But like we go into the back alleys of Toontown here, right? And it is seedy. It's a little gross.
And he falls out of the building because there's no the bathroom has been torn out of the building.
Yes. And there's a little thing on the wall that says, "For a good time, call Alice in Wonderland." And I went, "What is happening in this movie?"
Which I think is also a name of one of the animators who didn't get proper credit. Her name was not Alice in Wonderland, but it was Allison.
It was Alice in Wonderland.
But wouldn't you know it? Judge Doom is also skulking around these alleyways because he's trying to eliminate Eddie.
Yeah. Well, and he's also maybe a little familiar with Toontown. Maybe for more reasons than just crime busting.
But this all...
He's doing some other kind of busting.
Ultimately, this all cleans itself up.
To feel good.
Yeah. Ultimately, we do...
The script was written in Judge Doom's cum, I think.
What were you saying? You were talking about something else?
Yeah, it was.
I was just trying to move the show along.
You made
this is a show?
Yeah.
He calls it his dip.
Oh, no.
But we do make our way out of Toontown. Jessica Rabbit saves Eddie's hide. We go back to Acme HQ, to the warehouse, because Eddie has realized that, in fact, yes, Judge Doom is the bad guy who's been doing all of this, and he needs to be defeated for once and for all. But turns out they're all waiting for him and Roger and Jessica, and they're going to do their best to kill all of them.
Yeah, so we have the usual, tie someone to a table saw kind of a thing, where he has this big machine that's going to destroy the wall leading into Toontown, and it's going to demolish all of Toontown with the dip, because it also has a big water gun on
dip
top.
Sprayer.
Yeah.
But why would he want to do such a thing? Well, it turns out that much like Robert Moses, Judge Doom has a plan for what's going to happen to Los Angeles.
Involves a lot of arterials.
8 lanes of shimmering cement running from here to Pasadena. Smooth, safe, fast. Traffic jams will be a thing of the past.
So that's why you killed Acme and Maroon? For this freeway? I don't get it.
Of course not. You lack vision. But I see a place where people get on and off the freeway. On and off and on all day, all night.
He's walking upstage here.
Town once stood will be a string of gas stations, inexpensive motels, restaurants that serve rapidly prepared food.
He's having such a good time.
Oh my God.
Automobile dealerships and wonderful, wonderful billboards reaching as far as the eye can see. My God, it'll be beautiful.
What a monologue.
Unbelievable.
He is the only person having a good time in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's having a blast.
It really sets an example for actors. Like, just fall in love with every word you say.
Absolutely.
Really tear pieces of scenery off and start chewing them.
Turns out that this horrible guy, this horrible Judge Doom, well, he's not so much of a person as he is a tune.
Oh, it's interesting that they don't actually reveal his body, right? The one thing that's important is that, Hoskins saw his brother killed by a Toon with red eyes. And so we see that his eyes are red, and we hear that the voice is squeaky. You can maybe assume he's like a weasel, but it also kind of seems to establish that he's not a weasel.
I want to know who drew this evil cartoon that kills people. Yeah. Glowing red. Like, who in the 40s was like, here's the cartoon I got.
That was a big mistake. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
I think maybe it was part of Disney's propaganda, like World War II propaganda. Like this was like
it was done.
It was it was. I kind of feel like maybe this was like
just cartoon Hitler.
Yeah, I think maybe it was actually cartoon Hitler.
Or maybe it was one of Hitler's cartoons. Maybe it was from the UFA archive.
Oh,
UFA Magoof.
It could have been the Night on Bald Mountain guy. Maybe.
Oh,
he's a little spooky guy from the 40s.
Chernabog,
the Black God himself.
Yeah, I actually think that the scariest part about it,
like that his voice is like really high pitched.
I'm more of a Beelzebub girl, but
who
isn't?
There's a big like horrible scream that Jessica Rabbit does in this scene.
Yeah,
that is blood curdling.
Her eyes change. Her pupils change style.
And it's so funny because Jessica Rabbit has been cool as a cucumber.
Right. Yeah.
This whole movie to see her freak out like that, you're like, oh, we are in danger.
Yeah.
What follows is just some truly wonderful slapstick from Bob Hoskins here.
Oh my God.
Because he figures out that the way to stop the weasels is to get them to laugh.
Right.
And so he has to become kind of cartoonish himself.
Because if they laugh hard enough, they will die laughing.
And this is also a deeply terrifying thing for me, but their souls leave their bodies, and one of the weasels doesn't want it to happen, and is like pulling his angel back in, and I'm just like, oh no, that is a nightmare of death for me.
Crucially, he's improvising a song to The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down, which you might know as the Looney Tunes theme,
which Roger sang earlier to smash plates on his head.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And except he's not quite like he's still a little bit rusty.
He's not a tune.
And so Roger has to like provide rhymes, and then Jessica starts providing rhymes in a really fun way because you don't get to see her be like a tune very much, right? And it's nice that she gets to.
And he has to juggle these weights and throw them really high in the air and have them all land on his head. It's all very skillful.
You could tell that like he learned that doing clown parts in Shakespeare. Like this was like this will get the punchline.
Well, and also
all
all the actors, I should say, all the main actors who had to deal with cartoon stuff, they all got mime training for this movie.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So like this wasn't just like trusting people to come in with the right amount of training. They were like, no, we're going to have like this whole eye line thing, this whole making sure you're talking to someone that's a foot away from you, but not actually there at all. Like we need to beat that into people.
So Seaman brought in Lecoq is what you're saying.
No, come on. I will say, I don't think that I can praise the direction of this scene highly enough.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable.
There's so much going on.
What they were able to pull off
and
here.
It's also clear. Like the stakes are always there. You know exactly when it's going to happen. And
that's classic Zemeckis. He always knows how to fucking build up the end of Back to the Future. All three of them. It's always like, okay, let's get crazy.
He's so good at establishing like the geometry of a space.
Yes.
And like the stakes of a scene and like where you are in space and time and what is setting things. Like literally there's a scene earlier in the movie where it's just cops wandering around the warehouse being like, I wonder if this will pay off later.
Yes. it's sort of seeding that in your mind. And ultimately, this room is just a big rectangle.
Yeah.
But you know exactly how it's shaped. You know where the things are.
You know there's a boxing glove that shoots because someone is using it.
You know where the big like cannon that kills you instantly is and how it is utilized and how like what Bob Hoskins needs to do to turn it off.
We get to see Judge Doom melt into the floor, and it's so cool. Like the dip being like the main antagonistic force in this scene, like the main weapon. It does basically the same thing. It always just goes a little bit closer to Jessica and Roger, and then it goes back away, and then it comes closer. But somehow the tension is ramped up every single time until Judge Doom gets fully melted, fully gooped, and actually, the remains of his rubber carcass at the end are the most disturbing thing to me in this whole sequence.
The other thing that stuck with me from when I watched this as a child was after the reveal of him being a Toon is after he gets run over by the steamroller.
Yes.
He dies and then he blows himself back
Horrifying.
up. But he stands up and he's all like
He's
stop motion, Slender Man, and he's stop motion. And his hands are like curved up.
Yep.
And he's like,
and then he's got the Robin Hood fingers.
Yeah.
And then when he turns around and you see his real eyes for the first time, which are animated,
and then you realize real lies.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You're welcome.
Like that same for me.
Yeah.
I remember feeling
the stop animation
with that whole sequence gave me the fear. Capital T, capital F. Like, yeah.
But
Great,
also that ends
great
well.
shit.
You know, he gets melted, and then
all the cartoons, Mickey and everyone, they gather around him, and they're like, "Well, I wonder who he was."
That's right. We've got the clip.
I wonder who he really was.
I'll tell you one thing, Doc. He weren't no rabbit. Or a duck.
Or a dog.
Or a little wooden boy.
Or a sheep.
Or a woodpecker.
Or a pussy.
There's something about this moment, along, of course, with the fact that a big fucking cartoon train comes by and smashes the machine that kills you instantly.
Yeah.
This is now a metaphorical and physical representation of the walls coming down, because then we find the will. It turns out
we've had it all along.
We've had it all along.
It was in the disappearing ink. Everything has a payoff.
Roger used it to write a love letter to Jessica, and there we go.
Bad love letter.
In lipstick.
But we get our happy ending, and it's great.
Yeah, this is one of Mel Blanc's last performances before he died. There is a very wonderful story about how, well, it doesn't begin wonderfully, but Mel Blanc gets into a car accident, a very bad
hilarious.
one. It was
great.
To be fair, his car hit a banana peel right before it happened. But he was in a coma for a while, and his son tells the story about how nobody could get through to him. They would go and talk to him every single day, and then just like in his like deep grief, his son was just like, "Bugs," and Mel Blanc goes, "What's up, Doc?"
Oh,
yeah.
And then it's like, and then the doctor comes in. He's like, just try a different character. Just try a different character. He's like, Tweety. And he's like, oh, I thought a putty cat. And so he was able to like actually communicate with his dad that way. And then at the end of Mel Blanc's life, not long after this movie comes out, he went back into a coma, and he said he knew his dad was gone when he sat next to him and said, "Bugs," and no one responded because once Bugs left him, so did Mel.
It's so wild to think about his doing that stuff so long that his brain had become like quite literally maybe partitioned a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that's what made him so good at those voices, because you think about it,
fully embody them.
And of course, it wouldn't be a good cartoon movie without Porky Pig closing us out and saying, "That's all, folks."
Yeah.
That was just
But don't forget Tinkerbell has to fly across.
That too. You get both.
It is a Disney movie, you little slut. Don't forget. For one moment.
We grabbed your pig by the udders, and he said, "That's all, folks." But
they sing "Smile, Darn Ya, Smile," which was featured in a Warner Brothers. So in the early Warner Brothers days, when they were still doing black and white cartoons, they had a character that was a fox. I forget its name, but it was just Mickey Mouse, and they got sued, and they're like, "Okay, we can't do the fox anymore. We'll do Bugs Bunny. Fuck it." But like in one of those Fox cartoons, they sing "Smile, Darn Ya, Smile." So it's an actual old song. It's not just like a pastiche. This movie does incredibly well. They very quickly get a theme park ride built for it.
An entire area of Disneyland is called Toontown.
Yeah,
that's right.
But it's not Roger Rabbit's Toontown.
No, it's Mickey Mouse's Toontown.
And that was the plan, especially because they had opened MGM Studios down in Florida, which had nothing.
Yeah.
Much unlike today, where it's called Hollywood Studios.
And it
still has nothing.
When you're there, what will happen is they'll have a stormtrooper parade through it. You know, the fascists from the movie, that's like very explicit about how like they are fascists, and everybody cheers for them.
Yeah, it's silly because they do the little dance.
Yeah. 2, 3, kick turn, 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 kick turn.
Oola.
1, 2, 3, kick turn.
Whoa, whoa.
Watch me, faggots.
That's what I call a French mistake. So they were going to build a whole Roger Rabbit part of the park. I mean, this was a fucking major deal. They made 3 shorts that premiered before some of their other movies. They were going to keep working with Richard Williams to make even more shorts. They were going to make sequels, more than one, just like with Chinatown. It didn't work out, partly because this was made as a deal between Disney and Amblin.
Right.
Right.
And Steven Spielberg's relationship with Disney got kind of sour. He didn't really want to work with Disney in the first place. And then it became kind of this war of wills between him and Eisner. Became a legal battle as to like how can we exploit Roger Rabbit as a franchise?
Roger Rabbit.
Who exploited Roger Rabbit?
Who censored Roger Rabbit? Who whacked him?
Yeah.
Who whacked him off?
It was Jessica.
Who grabbed him by the notion?
So after a lot of notions, and I think this is part of the big disappointment for Richard Williams, is where he runs into more money problems.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that this is going to be the pig teeth that he can suck on for a while.
Right.
And it turns out not to be that for him.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's just because of basically feuds between producers and it's not the Warner Brothers issue. It's Amblin. It's Spielberg and Disney. So this thing kind of avoids being franchised and Eisner ran everything into the ground back then.
Yeah, this could have been slopped.
Yeah.
It could have been beslopped.
It could have been straight to video,
There's like, it's a piece there's a lot of art, obviously, that this happens to, but I feel like this movie so specifically, I can name 7,000 things that could and should have gone wrong with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? It shouldn't be good at all. It maybe shouldn't exist. Like, I don't know. Like, there's just so much about it that's just, like I said to Josh the other day, it was just like, it's a miracle. I don't know. Like, it's a miracle.
Yeah. And the fact that Eisner wasn't able to drive it into the ground with 10 million direct-to-VHS sequels. It just now stands as this singular work that encapsulates a moment and is unlike anything else that has ever been made before and probably ever will be made.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And also like has like unlike a lot of movies from this time, has like a point of view about like labor exploitation and like the built public environment that's like sort of like very doesn't really slot in nicely with like Reagan era movies generally.
Right.
Including Back to the Future.
Famously including Back to the Future.
Back to the Future is a Yimby movie.
So much that it scared off Crispin Glover.
Yeah, he was too woke for it.
He was too woke for it. I mean, he was right.
He was right!
And they hung him upside down for it.
And then used actual footage of him, and then he was able to sue and was again right, and he got a lot more money.
Check this out. Crispin Glover? More like Christpin Glover.
Fucking shit.
Wow. My God. It's a shame he had to sell his naming rights to an N64 game.
Rayman.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, you're talking about Glover.
No.
The game where you play as the hamburger helper.
Yeah, you play as the hamburger helper and you throw your ball at things. You can change that ball to be whatever you want, but you throw your balls.
Well, the N64
and you fight with your right hand.
Well,
much like Robert Zemeckis had to do while filming this. Fight his right hand at every...
we have enough time for like a 45-minute digression on Banjo-Tooie?
No. Can we have you back on to talk about Banjo-Tooie? Because
I'll talk about Banjo-Tooie. I'll talk about Space Station Silicon Valley.
Let's fucking go.
Here.
Yes.
Tech War.
I want to say something about this film that I think is remarkable, and I think it's in its use of cameos and why they work, because I don't know if we never ever really got into a discussion about that particularly, but it's because they don't set them up to be moments where you stand up and applaud.
Yeah.
They're not the main focus of any scene that they're in. The focus is always directed at Bob Hoskins. It is always directed at the story. There isn't a moment where like Bugs Bunny comes on screen and then there's just like,
they don't
the
pause
audience
for
like
applause.
applauding. And, it's like rewatching a lot of the Marvel movies of the past like 10 years. You just have these weird silences.
They just wait for entrance applause, basically.
And Star Wars did this too. But like, I think a lot of times too, if you're watching like Space Jam 2 or Ready Player One,
right?
The references for you. And here, I think every reference is for the animators that are making the movie.
Yeah, and also in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's like there to build the world and build the story. Like here's like a working actor, like it's Mickey Mouse who's like off work right now because he's he's in his own house. Whereas like in Ready Player One, it's like and there's Master Chief in the background. It's a little Easter egg for you to pick out. And it's like. Well, what the fuck is the point? Who cares? This movie has like such a deep understanding of the characters and how they would slot into this world, and like understands that Mickey Mouse is a little imp. It would never put the Iron Giant in it as a laser gun.
Yeah,
right.
To the point of cohesive world building, putting stories together, things like that.
Care,
Maddie.
Care.
Yeah, you wrote a fantastic book called Boys Weekend.
Oh, thank you.
And if you'd like to take a moment to tell folks about that, anything else that you're up to.
Here's me. Hi.
Hi.
So Boys Weekend came out last year. You can get it at any of your local bookstores or your library if you want to get it at a library. Not give me any money, but
you're a library person.
If you're one of those.
Oh God, there's been a knock at the door. They're a librarian.
No, the library is great. Read the book from the library. But it's in stores now. It's called Boys Weekend. It's about like a trans feminine person who goes on a bachelor party weekend in sort of like a futuristic Las Vegas. And then things get worse from there.
Like if Elon Musk ran Rapture from BioShock. That's is sort of the vibe.
Kind of the vibe. Yeah.
I will say I read it. You signed my copy. I bought a copy directly from you at a con. And at the time I was still working for a tech company.
Oh yeah.
And I think I remember messaging you about this and being like, holy fucking shit. Like this is just in many ways the experience that I have going to work every day, and it makes me want to die.
Yeah.
But also it gives another way out, a way that is true, a way that is, genuine and germane to the experience of the protagonist. I thought it was a really, really beautiful story, and I think everybody should read it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm very proud of it. And it's it's funny and it's a little scary, and I'm very happy with it. I just finished a new book that'll be out next summer. Hopefully pre-orders for that will go up very soon. Let's see what else is going on. I got a couple of podcasts. There's Temporal Culture War, which is about Star Trek Enterprise and the early 2000s sort of sick American culture. I've got a new podcast called No Gods, No Mayors. It's about to come out with Riley November, friends of all shows.
The friends of all possible shows.
And if you like, you can find me online pretty easily. Just Mattie Lubchansky. I got a Patreon where I post my comics every week. That helps me to live my life and eat food and have feed my cats and stuff.
Yeah, go sign up for that Patreon. We've actually been subscribers to that Patreon for a very long time.
Wow.
That's true. One of our first, I think.
Yeah. All those links right down in the show notes. Go check them out. Of course, if you want more of our shit, we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/worstofall. We do premium episodes every other week. That's $5 to get access to those, as well as Fancy Movie Time with Brian and AJ, where they talk about fancy movies. Or for $10, you can get access as well to our Lads Cast, which is just an hour a month where we shoot the shit about what's on our mind. And we've started doing it as a video podcast, at least for the time being.
Yeah, we'll see if we do it again. It was easy enough.
It was.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It's time consuming. But and we've also just put out like a little bonus episode for those of you who like our Adventures in Odyssey coverage.
Yeah, because we of course unlocked that episode with
our premium
Jake
from last week.
And so if you want more of that Odyssey shenanigans, we talked about an episode with Edwin Blaggard.
Played by Earl Bowen at his hammiest.
Yes.
Absolutely. So yeah, get on it.
So there's a scene in Roger Rabbit where Roger is hiding in the back of this speakeasy and Judge Doom is trying to seek him out. And he goes and tries to intimidate the Eggman from earlier. And Bob Hoskins is like, we're screwed. That guy's going to rat us out. And Roger's like, no, he won't. I made him laugh. He'll be fine. And the guy ends up not ratting him out.
Solidarity.
But it's like it is one of those moments that makes Bob Hoskins start believing again in basic humanity, and that he can trust other people again, and that specifically what Roger does is worthwhile. And I think when you watch something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it can be very easy to dismiss it as being a silly cartoon that also happens to be this noir story. But I sit and I watch it and I feel like Roger watching Goofy, where it's just this stuff, like Maddie, you were saying, it matters. It is important. And man, that guy's just such a fucking pro, huh? I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Bryans.
And I'm the worst of all possible Joshes. We will see you next week.